Project Manager, EU Switch Asia Regional Policy Advocacy Component, Dr. Mushtaq Memon. Distinguished speakers, representatives from EU Switch Asia RPAC, UNEP, AIT, TerrySAS, and all other participants in the dialogue. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you to the Roundtable on Mainstreaming Resource Efficiency in Textile Industry in India, organized by EU Switch Asia RPAC in partnership with Terry School of Advanced Studies, UNEP, Asia Pacific, and AIT Bangkok. We thank you all to take out the time today to join us. The objective of the roundtable is to explore systematic changes needed in policies and processes involved in various stages of production through dialogue with the industry, government and civil society stakeholders, and to share best practices, initiatives, and lessons learned on implementing resource efficiency and circularity in textile value chain. We are honored to have among us Professor Prateek Sharma, Vice Chancellor, Terry School of Advanced Studies. He has more than 20 years of research and teaching experience. He received his PhD degree in environmental engineering from IIT Delhi, and his research interests include environmental systems modeling, statistical applications in environmental and water resources engineering, and environmental risk assessment. He has been regularly contributing to high-impact academic journals and has been admitted as a Fellow of Wessex Institute of Great Britain in 2004 in recognition of outstanding scholarly work. I would now like to request Professor Prateek to share his introductory remarks.
Thank you, Charvi. Thank you so much. And very good afternoon to all of you. Shri Upender Singh Ji, Secretary, Ministry of Textiles, Dr. Michael Baki, Counselor EU Delegation to India, Dr. Mushtaq Memon, Regional Coordinator UNEP. So this responsibility has been given to me to give some initial remarks on this very relevant topic. So if we analyze the production of textile, what we actually observe is that it is a very highly resource intensive industry. And at the manufacturing stage itself, it requires water, energy, and chemicals. And it's just not limited to just the resource utilization. What we actually observe is it generates substantial amount of waste also in various environmental media. So before coming here, I just did my little bit of research, and basically based on that, some studies basically reveal that by 2030, the global clothing consumption is going to increase by 63%. And also reports also reveal that the current greenhouse gas emissions from the textile production stands at around 1.2 billion tons per annum. And there is a report by MacArthur Foundation which basically indicates that if we simply follow a business as usual scenario in terms of population and consumption trajectory, the textile industry by 2050 is going to contribute more than 25% of the global CO2 emissions. In the Indian context, if we see, and that is what the context of the roundtable is today, the textile industry basically contributes approximately around 5% of the total GDP. And India is the 6th largest exporter of textiles and in the world. And in terms of industry, it is the 2nd largest employer, providing direct employment. So basically, this industry contributes significantly to the Indian economy, which both in tangible and intangible terms, and it is one of the most fast-growing industries in the Indian context. So, however, if we observe that the growth of this sector also has the detrimental environmental impacts, both in the context of environment and in the context of climate change. So therefore, it is a critical of the entire life cycle of the textiles and quantify the environmental impacts at each stage of the supply chain, starting from fiber to fabric. By doing this, what basically we would be able to do is that, starting from basically the farmers to consumers, essentially including the manufacturers and the designers as well. Because this, all these players have an important part in reducing the pollution load and making the entire process more sustainable, so to say. Now, this is only possible if all the stakeholders which are involved in the supply chain of this industry, they come together on a common platform and try to identify the control points. And for this, basically having a common platform is essential, which actually is the agenda of today's roundtable meeting that we are having. And more importantly, if we have to identify these control points, the innovation and collaboration becomes the key factor. Now, this will essentially result in mainstreaming the resource efficiency at different stages of the entire supply chain, and basically we'll be able to identify control points so that we can target those control points so that appropriate action can be taken in order to reduce the in terms of resource utilization to a lower level, or in terms of reduction of waste that is generated from the industry. So by doing this, we will not only help in reducing the pollution load in different environmental matrices, but this will also be a very significant step in combating the climate change and the sustainability of the planet itself. So the roundtable on mainstreaming the resource efficiency in the textile industry in India actually is the right step in that direction. And it aims to bring various stakeholders of the textile supply chain on a common platform in order to identify gaps so that appropriate control points can be identified, where efficient practices may be introduced, and optimal resource utilization and resource efficiency may be institutionalized. So this basically what my understanding tells me, my sense tells me, would be the outcome of this roundtable which has been organized. And with this, I would like to thank the EU Switch Asia UNEP RPAC for providing the necessary funds, and so that this activity is possible. And along with the UNEP, I would also take this opportunity to thank AIT. Without their support, this would not have been possible. And there are very good speakers which are basically there for the discussion. So I would like to stop here and wish all you a very best, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Professor Prateek, for this insightful overview of the industry and need of this event. Today, we are also privileged to have among us Dr. Mushtaq Memon, Project Manager, EU Switch Asia RPAC. He is working with UNEP as Regional Coordinator for Resource Efficiency in Asia Pacific Office, located in Bangkok. He is supporting resource efficiency, sustainable consumption and production, green economy, green financing, sustainable public procurement, tourism industries, among others for Asia and the Pacific. He is also implementing EU-funded Switch Asia Phase 2 component to support sustainable development goals, especially SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production in the region. I take pleasure in inviting Dr. Memon to share his welcome remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Honorable Professor Prateek Sharma, Dr. Michael Berkey, Shri Upendra Singh, and all the excellencies, good afternoon. And on behalf of the European Union funded project Switch Asia's regional policy advocacy component, I would like to welcome all of you for this roundtable, which is very timely. As Professor Sharma already put the scenario in front. So I just want to add a few things on the top of that the textile industry is the backbone in most of the Asian countries. Under the Switch Asia, we have 18 countries, and in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Northeast Asia. And we can see that textile industry is one of the backbones in all those countries. So learning from Indian experiences, we can also help the other countries. So that's very important. And number two, as we saw that India is a huge country, so they have a domestic market as well as they have the export market. So again, how this like a phenomena works. So especially because we are also supporting the building back better after COVID. So one of the industries that was on the top for the building back better was the textile industry. So the textile industry started regenerating the new jobs, and I would say the green jobs, because this rebooting was basically to change in the energy mix for the textile energy, to move to the renewable energy, to change to the inputs. Because as you may know that after the packaging, the second largest plastic pollution is because of the textile industry. So again, they started looking on the different ways of managing the plastic pollution, and then also water pollution. So basically this rebooting after the COVID or building back better, we are focusing more on the textile industry. And that's why this is very important and timely that how India gets there. And number two, the point is that if you look on the textile industry and say manufacturing points, there's a lot of gender imbalance. It's more male dominant. Now, how you fix this balance of gender? So if you look on the circular economy, what's happening in the world, suppose again coming from the Europe, like many examples, Japan or other countries, that now they have the circular economy. That means a lot of textiles, fabrics, dresses can be reused without even recycled. So how this new chain of businesses is coming up where the female ratio is very high for those recycling shops and everything, the collection, and especially online applications and so on, and the new fashion designs using the old fabrics, old textiles and so forth. So we are trying to bridge the gap of gender, of youth, innovations, startups, and so on, and also bringing access to the poor people, because who may not be afford the high end, but who can get, at least if we have a proper way of reusing and so on, we can, because still the India is a penetration economy. So there's a lot of appetite for the reuse textiles and so on. So basically, most of the textile industries themselves, now they are pulling through the CSR, through the environmental, social, and governance investments. They are bringing this whole value chain within in a working level through extended producer responsibility and so on. So this is a good example that we can really see how the people who are like out of this textile value chain, especially with respect to gender, with respect to the poverty, with respect to the geography, we can bring them in so no one is left behind in this improvements in the textile system. And that's again, so I would like to really thank European Union for their lot of support, because since 2007, European Union has given a lot of support to sustainable consumption and production in different sectors. And again, as I say, textile sector is one of the key sectors because it also linked with the agriculture sector. It also linked with the plastic pollution and circular economy. It also linked with the public procurement and so on. So that's where we can look into that. So again, I would like to again thank EU for their generous support and for their technical guidance. I would like to thank Terry University. I would like to really thank Government of India, because they are really champions in this textile movement, I call it. And then also I would like to thank my UNEP colleagues and everyone. So we are looking forward to the great discussions, and we will bring these points forward to the other countries. So please help us making India champion in the textile revolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Memon, especially for highlighting the gender and poverty issue in textiles and how circular economy can bridge that gap. The EU Green Deal identified textiles as a priority sector in which EU can pave the way towards a carbon neutral circular economy and announced an EU strategy on textiles. The aim of the initiative is to set in place a comprehensive framework to create conditions and incentives to boost the competitiveness, sustainability, and resilience of the EU textile sector. The strategy is also central to Commission's agenda to achieve the United Nations SDG, especially focusing on SDG 12. We are privileged today to have Dr. Michael Buckey, Counselor of the EU delegation to India and Bhutan, join us today. Dr. Buckey leads the vertical responsible for dialogue of cooperation between EU and India in the areas of environment, mobility, urbanization, and smart cities, energy and climate change, small businesses, as well as EU's foreign policy instrument. Prior to this, Dr. Buckey worked in Jakarta, holding similar responsibilities for EU, Indonesia, and ASEAN. From 2006 to 16, he has worked in the European Commission on forest adaptation, forest fires, wood products, climate mitigation, deforestation, biodiversity, and international negotiations. He inter alia took part in the UN climate negotiations from 2010 up to 2015 Paris Agreement. I would now like to request Dr. Buckey to deliver the opening address.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mishra. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay. Distinguished Secretary Upendra Singh and official of the Indian Ministry of Textile, Professor Sharma and the team at TERI, Dr. Memon and the UNEP and Switch Asia teams, my dear colleague Meghna, fellow panelists, Indian and EU experts, ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon and a warm welcome. It is for me an honor to be invited and open this roundtable, and a pleasure to present EU perspective on sustainable textile. I will first start with a disclaimer that the EU textile strategy is not fully agreed yet. It will need to be presented, discussed further with our member states and our stakeholders. But today I'd like to share some focused attention on some keywords, key concepts that I think can be of inspiration and that we presented when we consulted those EU stakeholders. So first, a few words of context. In large part, this textile strategy is inspired by the European Green Deal, that is this general intention to reach carbon neutrality and living in harmony with nature by the middle of the century. Therefore, it relates to the Circular Economy Action Plan, the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability, and an upcoming initiative on sustainable products. We therefore clearly see textile as a priority sector in which the EU can pave the way towards a carbon neutral, toxic-free circular economy. But at the same time, one of the other services in the European Commission promoting this initiative is the industry ministry, if you will, the Directorate General for Growth, as it is called, because to us it also relates very much to an industrial strategy and a post-COVID communication, which is called Repair and Prepare for the Next Generation. That is to fix and improve the industrial ecosystem for textile in the EU, identifying the recovery needs that we have today, and also current and future challenges that we need to be able to address both on the demand and the supply sides. So the problem, I think, was already quite clearly summarized. Textiles, fashion and clothing. I will just talk about textile, although fashion is larger than textile, and textile is much larger than fashion if you think of footwear, industrial or household textiles. But just for the sake of simplicity, today I will just talk about textile as a meta sector. They make up a very diverse industrial ecosystem that cover different value chains and types of products. On average, one EU citizen uses about 26 kilograms of textile per person and per year, and of that we throw away 11 kilos. So that almost half of it is renewed each year. The pandemic has affected the international trade, notably in second-hand textile products, and disrupted waste streams. The textile consumption is very high in terms of pressure category for the use of primary raw materials and water. After food, housing, and transport is the fourth, and is the fifth as regards greenhouse gas emissions. And most of that pressure does not apply in EU. It occurs in other regions of the world where most of the production takes place. Moreover, it is estimated that just a very small fraction, less than 1% of all textile worldwide are recycled. It's still a very large industry in Europe. It employs 1.5 million people. It spreads across 160,000 companies in EU, mostly SMEs, with an annual turnover of nearly $185 billion per year. And it can be challenging for those small companies, those SMEs, to prove that their products are produced under acceptable environmental and working conditions. Besides, the textile sector often suffers from skill gaps, shortage, and mismatches due to often rapid technical changes that they need to adapt to. So with this introduction, what are we about to do? First, the goal is to adopt a coordinated and harmonized response across the EU to those structural weaknesses regarding textile waste collection, sorting, and recycling in our member states, in our 27 member states, and to strengthen the capacity of the public authority as well as the industry, but also to look abroad, because the textile sector is highly globalized, as I mentioned, and if we had fragmented action at EU or sub-EU level, we would not achieve sufficient change sufficiently fast. Besides, there is a strong demand from the stakeholders and the private sector in recent years to develop a sustainable textile approach at the regional level and not at the national level. Therefore, we aim at setting in place a comprehensive framework to boost the competitiveness, the sustainability, and the resilience of the sector. We do that through three main pillars. The first one is to drive sustainable investments in production process, design, new materials, new business models, infrastructures, and capacities. We want to support technologies, notably the digitalization and traceability, logistics related to innovative textiles. We want to tackle the release of microplastics that can be very polluting and enter the food chain. We want to work on manufacturing and recycling processes that can contribute to a digital and green transition. That's the production side. We also want to boost demand for sustainable and circular textile. Therefore, we consider targets for the reuse and recycling, as well as in green public procurements, and sustainable lifestyle, what we call the share economy, using the textile products as a service, renting and not necessarily buying everything that you may need. We're also looking at other sustainability models and voluntary schemes like EU Eco-Label, as well as extended producer responsibility and legal obligation to introduce separate collection waste textile by 2025, which is very, very soon. And then on the global dimension, where we also look at the protection of human rights, environmental duty of care and due diligence across the global value chains, including improving traceability and transparency. We hope to steer international cooperation and partnerships, including aid for trade, towards more sustainable consumption and production pattern, and including in terms of land and water use and the use of chemicals. So as you can see, it's a very comprehensive and ambitious strategy. And I look forward to see whether and how it could be adapted to the Indian context. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baki, for giving us an instructive overview of the framework devised by EU. We are now honored to have Shri Upendra Prasad Singh, Secretary, Ministry of Textiles, Government of India. He is a 1985 batch of a shadow. He has also held the post of Secretary in the Department of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, Ministry of Jal Shakti, and Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. He has held important assignments in both central and state governments and possesses rich and varied experience. He has the experience of working in different sectors like water resources, finance, steel, transport, etc. He had been deeply involved in policy, planning, and management of water resources in India. I now welcome him for the keynote address.
Very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I must thank the organizers for a very important and roundtable on mainstreaming resource efficiency in textile sector. I think all of us who are present here, they need not be told in detail about the importance of textile industry, either in India or the globally. In fact, whenever we talk of the basic needs of a human being, we always start with roti, kapra or makan. So naturally, textile has been very essential for all of us. Now, as far as India is concerned, as rightly has been pointed out, that India is a big country. We are the second largest producer of textiles in the world after China. As has been said, that we are also a pretty huge domestic market, and we also have a very sizable presence in export market as well. Even though some of the countries in recent past like Bangladesh and Vietnam today export more than us, but our export is also very, very substantial. But then we have a very huge domestic market, much larger than, let's say, a Bangladesh or Vietnam. We all know in India, a country like India, employment is very important, and textile industry or textile is second largest employer after agriculture in India. In fact, there are people who are directly employed, there are people who are indirectly engaged, but total number is estimated something like 10.5 crores actually, which is a very large number. Between 2 to 3%, about 2.5% it contributes to the GDP. Even export, this year we have of course a 400 billion USD target which we are going to achieve, and out of that almost 11%, and that is a 44 billion US dollar, is the target for textile industry, and we are quite on the way to achieve that. So we all know that textile is very important, and that's why especially I would say government has taken a number of initiatives in the recent past. Very recently, we have a cabinet approved, and we have launched what is called a PLI scheme for textile, production linked incentive scheme for textile, because our textile, which everybody knows, is more of a natural fiber based, and that to a cotton dominated textile industry. Whereas if we look at the globally, like we have about 70% of cotton-based textiles and maybe a 30% which is a man-made fiber-based textile. World over, it's other way around. It's about 70% which is man-made fiber and 20%, 30% which is maybe a cotton-based textiles. Going forward, in fact, the predictions are or estimates are that in a few years time it would be 80-20 kind of. 80% would be a man-made fiber based textile industry, only about 20% would be natural based textile industry. And accordingly, this production linked incentive scheme focuses on two things. One is that man-made fiber-based textiles, and then it also focuses on technical textile. In times to come, especially for India, it's very important because not only it has much more scope for use in different sectors in India. Penetration of technical textile in India is pretty low as compared to penetration of technical textile, which is more of a functional textile rather than a textile from the aesthetic point of view. So we have something called a National Technical Textile Mission, where we are working over a number of R&D projects as well. Plus PLI also is basically meant for man-made fiber-based textiles and technical textile. Another problem in India has always been that even though we have certain strengths, but we are very fragmented. The value chain in India is very fragmented, and we do not have a real size and scale. Even a country like Bangladesh and Vietnam have the advantage of size and scale. Of course, they have some other advantages like FTA with a duty kind of a concession with EU, UK, etc. But so to bring about this very high logistic cost and this fragmented value chain to be addressed to some extent, we have recently launched what is called a PM Mitra scheme, whereby we have decided in the first phase to set up a 7 mega textile park over an area of not less than 1,000 acres with a world-class infrastructure with plug-and-play facility. So these are some of the initiatives which government has in recent past taken. But as rightly has been pointed out, that there are issues also when we talk of sustainability. Sustainability and the resource efficiency issues are naturally in India as well, which is elsewhere. But sustainability is fast becoming a buzzword actually. Maybe a pandemic also has to certain extent taught us that how to become more sustainable. In fact, some of the people in the industry have suggested that we should have a sustainability index for textile in India. And we had earlier also we had launched what is called a SURE with the industry, primarily to focus on resource efficiency and the negative externalities which are there. Like when we talk about our strength, the first thing we say that we are very good in raw material. We are good in raw material both ways. Even man-made fiber raw material is good, but we are largest producer of cotton in the world. But then everybody knows that cotton has very high water footprint actually. And I have been, in fact, before I moved about a year back to this ministry, I have been dealing with water resources for 4.5 years actually. And we all know that how water use efficiency is extremely poor in India. We do talk of all kinds of problems which we are going to face because of the water crisis and all. But my take is slightly different. I feel in a country like India should not have the problem of water crisis. A country which gets about 1,000 millimeter of rainfall on an average, in spite of its distribution over time and space being very skewed. If we manage our water well, actually, the problem is the management, whether it's the supply side management or the demand side management. We have been primarily in this country, we have been focusing on what is called a supply side management. We increase the resource availability, but we have not been really focusing on what is called a demand side management. Today water use efficiency in agriculture, which accounts for more than 85% of total water use in India, has a water efficiency of not more than 35-40%. That means we use basically 2.5 times to 3 times more water than we should be using. And that's why if you calculate that for producing 1 kg of cotton, how much water are we using? So when we say that we are exporting so much of a cotton or we are exporting so much of a apparel or a cotton based apparel or something, virtually we are exporting so much of a water. It's a virtual export of water. Can we afford to do that actually? So unfortunately, people do not talk much of these things. I remember when I used to, in my previous assignment for more than 3 years as Secretary of Water Resources, I used to have something called a water talk every month. And in one of the water talks, one of the speakers talked about water footprints. Now, nobody talks of water footprints as yet. People do talk of carbon footprints. But then water footprints, for example, and I brought another something for discussion, that whenever you talk of productivity, everybody will say Punjab is productivity of rice and wheat is very high in Punjab. How do you calculate the productivity? You calculate productivity based on per hectare of wheat and rice produced. I said, why don't you? That's the land productivity. Land is one factor of production. Water is also a factor of production. Why don't we also talk in terms of water productivity? How much per meter cube of water, how much are you growing actually? And by that, maybe a state of Chhattisgarh or Odisha or Jharkhand may become more, could have a higher productivity as compared to, let us say, Punjab or Haryana. And with what consequences everyone knows now today. So it's very important to talk of resource efficiency. I just gave an example of the water consumed in cotton. The more you consume water, the more kind of affluent you generate. In fact, everybody knows that textile processing is one of the most polluting kind of processes or industry. In fact, today there is not one processing cluster in India which does not have either a Supreme Court or a High Court or NGT case actually. Because even when in our problem in our country also has been that we pay for construction, we don't pay for performance. So we produce CETP, we produce sewage treatment plants, but nobody talks of how much are you really treating. again in my previous assignment of Secretary Water Resources or as Director General National Mission for Clean Ganga, whenever we used to talk how much sewage gets generated, that estimate is there. How much capacity of sewage treatment plant has been created is there. But nobody talks in terms of how much every day we treat actually. So capacity doesn't mean much. What is the capacity utilization and what is the quality of treatment? That is what matters actually. So it's a pollution from a weaving industry, a processing industry. Now, as you make advances, for example, we earlier had in weaving, we have primarily, weaving is in decentralized sector, so we primarily had what is called a shuttle looms. Now, when we started having modern looms, shuttle-less looms, there is something now air jet looms, rapier looms, there is something called water jet looms also which is used. Now you go to Surat and you will find large number of water jet looms. The moment water jet looms has come, it also basically has started adding to water pollution which needs to be managed. Rightly, it was pointed out that a lot of old and non-usable textiles and many times even usable textiles basically goes, almost I read somewhere that 90% of that basically goes into a landfill site itself. So we have to work on that. For example, right now we had a huge problem of PET bottles earlier, but today PET bottles are basically utilized by a number of textile companies for making textile products. So it's very important, right from whether it's I only talked of the water use efficiency in, let's say, cotton, or I only talked of pollution as far as processing or a weaving industry is concerned, or maybe managing old and unusable clothes. But then there are issues actually, and I'm happy that today there are some experts. I'm not an expert on this subject, so there are experts who will be talking on this, and I would look forward to. I will request organizers, certainly they will make us available what is the kind of recommendations which emanates out of today's roundtable conference, because one of course is there are certain things which industry will do, but then certain things perhaps government also needs to do in terms of the policy gaps or whatever is there, which I presume would be identified today and some prescriptions will be made. So I would look forward to getting recommendations from this roundtable, and I'm happy to be here. And unfortunately, I have another meeting, but I would like to stay here for a while, maybe hear to one expert, and before I join my another meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Upendra sir, for talking about all important government initiatives and for your fresh perspective regarding demand economics and management. Thank you everyone for the addresses. It's been a pleasure listening to your informative, positive and action-filled words for a sustainable textile industry. With that, we move to the keynote presentations. To deliver the first presentation on findings of the assessment of Indian textile RE policy landscape, we are honored to have Dr. Ranjana Chaudhary. She is a civil and environmental engineer by training and pursuing PhD in hydrology. She has over 25 years of experience in industry and academics. Her areas of interest include water resource management, watershed hydrology, and analysis of hydrological systems, including predictions. Ma'am, we can't hear you.
My screen, Charvi?
Yes, ma'am, we can see your screen.
And it does say findings of the assessment?
No, ma'am, we can't see your presentation right now, only the screen.
Okay. Yes, you can see it now?
Yes, ma'am. You can put it on presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for joining this roundtable, and we of course heard the secretary, and he gave some very valuable points on the water footprint and on the efficiencies. And so we did this study, and I'm here to share a few findings with all of you and to take a validation and get your viewpoints on this, because there are a number of experts from the industry here. So we have tried to capture the resource use profile of the textile industry, identify the hotspots where we need to institutionalize the resource efficiency, and we wanted to also map some policies across the life cycle stages of the textile value chain and identify gaps with the existing policies. And we, of course, needed this roundtable to be able to identify the tangible solutions and the systemic changes that are needed. So as Secretary has mentioned, we are, of course, the largest producer of cotton. We produce polyester, viscose, and we are the 5th largest exporter of textiles and apparels. There are 45 million people who work directly. It is a very major sector. So why is it that this dialogue on resource efficiency and sustainability is needed? So though it makes a significant contribution, but there is this need for innovation. As the Secretary was talking about the change in the looms, so how the resource use also changes as we move from one system of power looms to some other system. So while it is a fast-growing system, there is a large-scale production. But what are the environmental costs that are related to this kind of newer changes that we are proposing? And the purpose of including sustainability is to be able to generate a thriving ecosystem. So when we are talking about the mega textile park, it will be a thriving ecosystem by itself. And we have to create alliances to increase the value of the local produce and products and try and keep them resource efficient. So when we talk in terms of the material flow, we have two kinds, the synthetic fiber and the natural fiber. So they have different raw materials that are used. For example, in case of cotton, we use fertilizers and pesticides, while the synthetic fiber is essentially hydrochemical based. The processes from there, once the fiber, the yarn is produced, then of course the textile processing is there. And in these processes, there is different energy demand, different water demand, and of course, the impact on the climate change and the disposal, the textile waste that we keep, we are talking about. What are we going to do with that? How to introduce secondary raw material? So right now, the textile industry is linear. So we need to have cross-cutting initiatives which are focused on different stages of the life cycle of the textile product. And that is the way, if we are able to address each and every stage of the textile value chain, will we be able to look at what resource efficiency is needed. So globally, a study says that 215 trillion liters in a year is used for the apparel industry. Then we have the microplastics, which are being generated through the synthetic textiles. And then we have these greenhouse gases which are emitted. The wet processing of dyeing and finishing, it is very energy intensive and uses water. The fiber production has contribution to the climate. So for India, what do we see? So we have, of course, these are based on secondary studies, and we find that the per kg of cotton fabric between 7,200 to 8,500 liters of water are needed. The carbon footprint is between 7 kg to 20 kg carbon dioxide equivalent per kg of cotton fabric produced. And there are these greenhouse gas emissions which are noted to be there in the spinning and the weaving phase, and the cumulative energy demand is at 7 to 8 kilowatt hours per kg. So we wanted to assess the impact on climate change, the freshwater withdrawal, and the resources. And these have different units of measurement. And then we find that as far as the cultivation phase is concerned, it is supposed to be 5 to 6 kg of carbon dioxide equivalent. In the production stage, it is 8 to 22. Of course, these figures need validation from the industry. Then we have these freshwater withdrawals, which we see fairly for the cultivation stage. In case of cotton, we have an idea that it is 7 to 8 kiloliters per kg. In the production phase, it is about 80 liters to 200 liters. So this is a broad range that we could come up with. The energy footprint is there in the cultivation phase as well as the production phase. But what matters is that we also have to find out how much of this can be recycled. It is only when we are able to quantify will we be able to think of the recycling and the reuse. So the synthetic textiles have a higher energy demand. Then when we are looking at these assessments, we also need to have policy backup. So we did a policy mapping, and what are the actions and the policies that are needed to introduce resource efficiency in the textile value chain. So we, of course, compared the policies with EU because they have one of the most progressive policies in terms of resource efficiency and achieving circularity in the textile sector. So the EU policies reflect sustainable consumption, have to be achieved by reducing wastage and, of course, introducing secondary material. And India exports a major portion of its textiles to EU. So we would need to adhere to their guidelines and environmental standards because a part of the value chain that we are talking about is very much located in India. So as far as the Indian environmental legislations are concerned, if we look at the environment legislation, it talks about water pollution, air pollution, environmental protection, but there is nothing specific to the textile sector. And what are the industry standards that we can have, which are needed for compliance in the textile industry? Can we look at it holistically? There are regulatory authorities of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and the Central Pollution Control Board and the State Pollution Control Boards. The enforcement is, of course, done by State Pollution Control Board. The Secretary rightly mentioned that we have a lot of court cases which are there, but the environmental compliance with the standards will be something to look at. Now, when we look at essentially policies from 2000, starting with the National Textile Policy, we find that when it comes to introducing resource efficiency, we have progressively been, of course, talking in terms of increasing production, which was the need of the hour. And we have also been trying to have institutional and technological support, but more R&D is required in the various processes that are involved in the textile industry. The Integrated Processing Development Scheme, of 2013 is about meeting environmental standards through appropriate technology. Then the Make in India was there in 2014. Then we have the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture because we also looked at cross-cutting policies which are relevant for the textile industry. The draft notification for the amendment rules of standard effluents because as Sir rightly mentioned that we are talking in terms of the standards for effluent. We have to have a CTP, but of course, what are the treatments that we are doing every day? That becomes very important to note. Then 2019, we have the draft National Resource Efficiency Policy, the pesticide bill, and of course, PM Mitra. And we are very hopeful that because of this integrated mega parks that we are going to have and different stages of textile production will be at a single place, and this is going to help in resource efficiency. So the European Union policies have been, of course, we have gone through that. The reason is that the Indian apparel export industry is dependent on the European Union, and then there are a host of progressive policies to institutionalize circular economy across various sectors. We heard Dr. Baki also talking about it. So the European policy landscape, the EU Green Deal is the overarching strategy. And they towards moving to a clean and circular economy, the Circular Economy Action Plan and the EU Strategy for Sustainable Textiles, which talk in terms of zero pollution, and of course an ambition for a toxin-free environment. We also found that the European-based directive of 2018, wherein progressively there will be less and less textile waste going to the landfill, and there will be a landfill tax that shall be introduced. And these are real progressive measures. Then France's climate law speaks about mandatory environmental labeling of goods and services. Then bill on the fight for waste and circular economy, the REACH regulations, which talk about exchange of information across the value chain. Now, this will, of course, right from the beginning to the end of the textile value chain, what are the resources that are used and how they are being used. Those are looked at by REACH. So we find as far as the policy gaps are concerned, this is, of course, we will seek validation for this as well. So we find that most of our policies are in the first two stages of the life cycle, namely the fiber production, the textile production stages. But an integrated approach to building a circular system across the textile value chain will be needed. Then the inclusion of specific initiatives with respect to the textile industry. So in the National Resource Efficiency Policy for integration of the 6R and green procurement, public procurement, material recovery, can we have a similar directive to the EU waste framework? Can we start working on that kind of a framework? And what is the incentivization that we can work on for use of secondary raw material? Then our recommendation would be to introduce the transparency in the textile value chain, in the sense that right from the beginning to the end of this textile value chain, if we could understand the resources, how they are used, and so if we could do an audit of all these, the water footprint, the energy footprint, and the and things like the GHG emissions, so then there will be a transparent system of information, and we will know where we need innovations the most. And policies which are relevant to the allied sectors of agriculture, manufacturing, and processing need to evolve towards a singular cross-sectoral policy framework that incorporates multilateral facets governing the textile industry. And if we can have sustainability transitions, these will, we understand that they will take time, but what are these dominant practices wherein we need to bring about the change and change in the policy? What kind of thinking can be there for us to have the circular system in place, so that we are able to align the policy goal with local context, and we have to involve all stakeholder industries, government, consumers, to be able to have an effective policy framework by addressing the upstream and the downstream dimensions in the entire textile production system. One of the things that we found about the solid waste management rule of 2016 was that they speak in terms of a 5% land amongst in the industrial estates which have to be allocated for resource recovery, so that we are able to recover resources from waste and build recycling facilities. So together with the conceptualization of the textile cluster and the PM Mitra that we have, so if most of the processes of the textile value chain are located at one place, we believe that development of recycling plants for resource recovery and introducing secondary raw material in the value chain will be something which will be achieved, and that way we'll be able to optimize the resource efficiency and circularity. And segregation of textile waste is something we have to think of. Of course, this is largely done by the informal sector, but what are the upskilling measures that are there? Could we have some new schemes to incentivize this? And can we have markets that we create for recycled textile products? So during the roundtable discussion that we will have, we hope that tangible solutions and systemic changes needed in the sector will emerge, and this will certainly make the study more robust. So thank you, and once again, thank you very much for participating and joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhary, for talking extensively about the policies in EU and India, their future implications, and for the important proposal of a singular policy framework. Today, we are privileged to have among us Dr. Naresh Tyagi. He is a senior professional with over 2 decades of diversified experience in the apparel and textile sector and across its value chain. He is currently the Chief Sustainability Officer at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited. He is a group member of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and Cotton 2040, strategy group member for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and Circular Apparel Innovation Factory, and sits on the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, Cotton 2040 and SBTI Working Group. It's an honor to invite him to deliver the second presentation on sustainable textiles, its challenges and benefits. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Charlie and organizer, for this opportunity. It's a privilege to hear Textile Secretary and perhaps Secretary talking about that product footprint and water footprint is some of the delight to know that how important sustainability is for the sector and industry. I'll put my presentation and just let me know when you are able to see it.
Sure, sir. Yes, sir, we can see it now.
About my company, this is Aditya Birla Group company, Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. We are one of the largest fashion and lifestyle retail company. We have bouquet of brand. We have almost 15-16 brand from Louis Philippe, Allen Solly, Peter England, Pantaloon to now Sabyasachi, Shantanu Nikhil, Style Up. It's well present across India, and we have 3,000 plus store in all the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 city of India. We have 22,000 employee, and more than 50% employee is women. So secretary already talked that this is second largest industry. And to add to that, it is giving a lot of employment to women. Hence, it take care of that gender equality in India as a sector for employment. So about that sustainability, we started our sustainability journey almost decade back. We look into that 2012 when this topic was not so much a buzzword or talking point. And we look all that need to be done for as a good responsible company we need to do. So we look into that our own Aditya Birla Group sustainability framework and vision. We look into that global benchmark, what are the other people are doing globally. We look into that industry expert. We involve big 5 company to give us expertise. We look all that national and global regulatory landscape, what is mandatory and what is required to be in global level. Then we have that forum for future, and we did that future scenario building and analysis to put that future program. And why all these things that our sustainability program, Re-Earth, started in 2012. We clearly articulated what we want to do in that our sustainability program. We say that we are committed to give back more than what we take from ecosystem. And the focus was more on that our operation, looking into balance of natural resource and that how all business ecosystem work on. And then we set that 10 mission from energy, carbon, waste, water, wash, green building, product packaging, CSR and safety. And all that 10 mission we set clear target of what we want to do within our operation. And happy to say that if even that target 2020, when we look into that, more or less all that target we set for our Re-Earth program was achieved or what beyond our expectation. Our 75% water is recycle reuse. Perhaps we are the only company to have zero waste to landfill. None of our waste from our system goes to landfill. We have not only look into that energy efficiency, but renewable source of energy. Today, 34% of our energy requirement come through solar and other renewable energy. Green building and smart building, be it our factory, warehouse or office, we look into that green building certification. 12 lakhs square feet is either certified or in the process of certification by
Sorry, sir, we can't hear you.
We may ask him to unmute. I think he has gone on mute.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you're audible now.
Oh, sorry. So we have that green building as a philosophy. All our factory, warehouse and office, we are certified for UGBSE and IGBSE LEED certificate. Even perhaps we are the only retail company to have platinum level rating for our logistic and warehouse in India. In our operation, we focus on safety and work safe place. 40% of our product have at least one sustainability attribute. we have focused a lot on packaging. 88% of our packaging is on the sustainable packaging. We have been able to eliminate and reduce a lot of unwanted packaging from our system. For social benefits, CSR, we have been touching community and area where we operate for that positive impact. And as this is almost 1 decade, we have been doing sustainability for our company. We keep participating, and one of the things which we participated is DGSI, S&P Global DGSI. In their corporate sustainability assessment, we have been not only retained as a Asia top most sustainable company in our sector, but we were part of their annual sustainability yearbook, and perhaps in our sector, only Indian company to be in their yearbook for the sector. And you see that globally our position 8th in that textile, apparel and retail sector, which clearly say that what we have been doing is on right framework, and we have been doing it rightly for last 1 decade. Now we are looking into that. It's not only resource efficiency, it need to go beyond resource efficiency to resource optimization. Hence now we have taken that our program called Sustainability 2.0, where we have set our goal and target for 2025 and 2030. And we want that process-led approach to be product-led, because if we take everything as a core and center of our strategy for the product centricity, then it is moving from supply chain to value chain. Hence, we decided to have our Re-Earth mission for that product centricity, where we will look all that element of designing the product, whether it is clean by design, or looking into entire supply chain, collaborating with our partners, how to have that product intensity and a scope for energy, water, carbon, waste. Is there any way to look into that some of the sustainability index? Globally, we follow that SAC Higg index. So we have that Higg index BRM and facility environment management for our supplier. How we look into that more circular economy, where we bring all that consumer, customer and value chain together. This is something which we are now transiting towards our vision 2025. Very challenging, but seeing that past performance and looking that framework, what we have been doing, we are very sure and committed that we will try to move to that product-centric approach going forward and looking into that circular economy. What we believe that one company, one organization can be done within the boundary, but to bring that change to entire value chain and supply chain, you need to do a lot of collaboration, because our industry is very fragmented and majority of part is unorganized. So how you bring that like-minded people together to bring the change, to bring the innovation, to collaborate, is something which we have been working globally and nationally. Textile Secretary mentioned about that SURE program, Sustainable Resolution. We 16 brand in India signed that resolution with Minister of Textile to move to that sustainable program for our organization. Same way that we have been working with Allen MacArthur and Cotton 2040. We thought that at national level, we need to bring that circularity program. Hence, we are anchoring Circular Apparel Innovation Factory. Now with GIZ Germany, we have taken 3-year project to develop PPP for circularity in the sector and in the country. We have been working with all that like-minded people like Sustainable Apparel Coalition, WBC, SDC, BCI, even for our building, whether it is a factory warehouse, we are looking all that building to be certified for LEED and CII AGBSC. Even we are moving our factory towards that net zero carbon and water. And now we are setting it to that not only disclosure, but how we can participate in that net zero program and detoxifying our that supply chain for hazardous chemical. So with that, we are now working on our 2025-2030 program. We have been working with all our partners, stakeholders, because we believe that it's a collaboration which can help or enable the change to happen for the industry. And with that, I would say that though we have been progressing well, but it's always work in progress for us. And we want to collaborate more and more with the stakeholder in that sector to bring that from linear to circular side of the industry model. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tyagi, for talking about ABFRL's philosophy of not only striving for resource efficiency, but resource optimization through re-earth, and how businesses have such a big impact when working in line for the same sustainability targets. For the third presentation on circular textile and apparel in India, policy intervention priorities and ideas, I have the pleasure to invite Ms. Devyani Hari. She is director at Center for Responsible Business. Her work focuses on issues of sustainability, especially pertinent to the SME sector, sustainability through global value chains, and the interface between SDGs and the private sector. A postgraduate in finance from IIM Bangalore, she has over 18 years of experience in the circular economy. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Charvi, for the kind introduction. Clarification, 18 years of experience, plus few years on circular economy. So thank you. Thank you to the organizers for giving this opportunity. It has been absolutely delightful to listen to everyone ahead of me, and to be honest, a tough act to follow. I think starting right from Dr. Prateek, who brought in the value chain approach, and Dr. Mushtaq talked about inclusivity, which was very important to look at, and the framework that Dr. Michael talked about. Secretary, it's always a pleasure to listen to him because he brings in the perspective of resource efficiency. How can we look at small changes but having big impacts? So that is always great to hear. Ranjana's presentation, very well done, and also I think it also echoes some of our findings, and it's always a pleasure to listen to Dr. Tyagi and be inspired. In fact, Dr. Tyagi has also been very instrumental in the presentation that I'll be making, the policy inputs that we did. He was very kind and generous with his insights, with his time, so that is great. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I think some parts of it have been covered, so I will probably keep it brief and happy to take questions later. Just before I go ahead, a little bit about my organization, Center for Responsible Business. We are about 10 years old now, a think tank, and our vision is simple, that businesses integrate sustainability into their very core. We work on a number of sustainability issues, circular economy being one of the key ones. Now, given our focus and philosophy of multi-stakeholder engagement, we've been undertaking a fair bit of research and convening around the issue of circular apparel in India. And, so this is... Hi, can you hear me?
Ma'am, we can hear you now. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Is it okay? I don't know. I just got a message that I was removed from the meeting, so I'm not sure. Okay.
We'll just check on that. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the work that I will be talking about today is quite along the lines of what Ranjana also talked about, that, when we looked at circular economy, So I'm not going to talk about how important the sector is. I think previous speakers have done that in a fantastic manner. We've also seen the challenges that we had with the current linear economy and the need for resource efficiency and having to move to a more circular model and the opportunities that circular economy offers. Now, just before I get into it, so if we look the status of things today is that clearly there is a case for us to adopt circular economy, right? But how do we go about it? If you look at circular apparel, first we need to understand that what are those considerations for India, right? We have a huge domestic market, we have an export market, we consume, but we manufacture as well. So what does circular economy really mean? And what are those opportunities that present for the value chain in India? Then is there a common understanding that we can establish, because for a long time, the focus was perhaps on managing waste or recycling, but there is so much more beyond. And can we create awareness on the opportunity offered by circular economy? And if we have to talk about resource efficiency and circular economy, circular apparel, we need to have a conducive environment, policy, financing, technology, research, innovation, capacity building. And this particular work that I will be talking about really
Sorry, ma'am, we cannot hear you. I think you accidentally went on mute.
Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, and where did you lose me?
Just a second before, yeah.
Okay, great. So, so what we did was we first felt that there was a need to develop a framework that what does circular apparel mean in India? Like, how do we go about this discussion? We looked at secondary research. We did a lot of stakeholder consultations. What are innovations on the ground? What are opportunities on the ground? Where do you see the need for policy support? What kind of action could be taken? And then we identified some priority areas and actions that could be taken to promote circular apparel and accordingly try and identify what could be some policy actions that could be done. Now, what I'm presenting is not going to be the full paper because there is a full paper we've developed and I have taken some parts of it here to present. This is the framework that we looked at, the value chain, the apparel value chain, and said right from fiber till retail consumption and post-consumption recycling is one aspect. And along the other axis, we look at, on the design side, in the materials that we are using, the chemicals that are being used, waste, either material waste or water waste, how do we work with that? How do we look at energy usage across the value chain? Water either in terms of the treatment of the wastewater or the water consumption itself or the sources of water, can we look at water use efficiency? And I think we also heard from earlier speaker on business models. There are a lot of businesses that are coming up with circular solutions. So how do we promote and support such businesses? And how do we also create awareness about such businesses? So if we just start with the design aspect, because when we talk of circularity, right, I think we need to start right at the design stage. Are we using the right materials? Are we producing in a manner that it makes it easy to recycle? Are we creating, are we using resources that are resource efficient, right? Are we using materials that are easier on the environment? So some priority area was that there need to be circular design principles, which need to talk about the materials, the ratio between virgin and recycled, what sort of chemicals we use, how do we envisage the end of life use, what sort of collection mechanisms we have, how can we look at design innovation so that we reduce wastage at the design and production stage itself. And it was also felt that we need to involve the designers. So we talk about the manufacturing, but the designers also, design institutes, academia can play an important role here. And we did hear from some other speakers that comprehensive standards perhaps are required for the industry. But then when we look at these standards and benchmarks, it is also very important that they are set in consultation with the stakeholders. It's not something that can be imposed from outside. In fact, what we also heard from our consultations was that sometimes these benchmarks may have to be even at a local or regional level, right? And not just at a national level, because different clusters have different local conditions, and I think that needs to be taken into account. So they did talk about that, yes, standards and benchmarks could be good to help measure the performance and the aspiration of the industry, but also take into account what the local conditions are so that those standards and benchmarks are achievable. So a suggestion was to look at a task force which looks at various industry stakeholders, and design institutes are included as part of that as well. When we looked at materials, again, alternative, one aspect. So materials, again, has several aspects that cotton is talked about. It's extremely important for us for livelihoods, but we understand the water footprint, the pesticide footprint, also at a dyeing stage, that the environmental impact of this is very high. And do we look at more organic cotton? And if we look at organic cotton, then the value chain approach is very important. How do we create a demand for it across the value chain? How do we create an acceptance for it across the value chain? Then do we look at man-made fibers? And we also see that, there are a lot of materials that are coming, innovative materials like with agri-residue, right, which are providing alternatives to some of the traditional materials that we've been using. So how do you create an ecosystem? How do you create acceptance for such materials is also something that came to fore. And transparency and traceability for materials is something that was highlighted as an important aspect. So again, when we look at policy, can we look at a minimum recycled content? Can we look at very clear content law that the fiber content is clearly indicated? There is a need that if today we talk about using recycled content, we also have to be cognizant that this has to go hand in hand with R&D, right? Because the solutions may not always be there. We know what the end goal is that we are aspiring to, but how much can we actually recycle today? Can we invest in R&D? And can we also create an awareness program, an acceptance? Can we have a certain sort of labeling or rating of recycled materials so that they have acceptance in the marketplace as well? When we look at chemicals, now chemicals came as a very important thing. We did hear from a number of stakeholders that, there are greener alternatives available. There is increasing awareness of cleaner chemicals. Sometimes availability of the chemicals is a challenge, but there is a need for a large industry-wide awareness program, on the availability, on the uptake of such chemicals, and also perhaps a clearer policy or a stricter law against the use of certain hazardous chemicals. And this was also something that brands indicated, right, that they do have their restricted substance list. And if policy can support, you could actually stop that chemical usage much earlier in the value chain than looking at it later stages. So it also, so I think ban on certain kind of chemicals, creating awareness programs, incentivizing growth of some natural dyes were some of the things that we heard. Waste management, here we have focused on post-consumer collection and recycling. Dr. Tyagi touched upon this, but this needs to be supported with a very robust collection mechanism, right? How do you collect back? How do you, and can we start with a simple thing that can we ban the landfilling of textile waste? Because there are many businesses that are coming around recycling, that are coming around repurposing, that are coming around working with this waste, and they create employment opportunities and also address an environmental concern. So can we have policies, startup policies that give preference to such startups, that there are additional incentives that are considered for them? So you could have certain bans in at one hand, but you can also look at incentives and special benefits for startups which are looking to address these problems. We also heard that there was scope to work with pre-consumption waste, waste that is generated at the production level, but traceability, again, there is a huge issue. Perhaps also need to create a more active ecosystem for handling the hazardous waste, right? Because there are very strict guidelines on how to handle, but sometimes there are perhaps not enough vendors to do that. So these were some of the things that we're hearing. EPR rules would play a big role. But again, I think again and again, I would like to reiterate that we need to work with different stakeholders at the same time. We can't have EPR rules applying on the brands if we don't have a robust enough collection mechanism or solutions on what to do with the waste that is, or the apparel that is collected back. So I think everything needs to move in tandem, and that's something that is always need to be kept in mind. We look at energy consumption. So quite a few players have looked at renewable energy, energy efficiency, made those investments. But I think one of the challenges that the stakeholders and industry actors faced is sometimes the fluctuating policies also, especially given the long-term investments that are made into clean energy systems, right? Especially on renewable energy, is that stable long-term renewable energy policies would go a long way in encouraging the industry to adopt, clean energy to the largest extent possible. And there are good incentives for energy efficiency. So there is scope to keep looking at the amended TUF scheme to include energy efficiency to a larger extent. Now, in the water consumption, this was an interesting one because quite a few places we heard that water consumed is not always charged, right? And so there was not much incentive to look at how water use could actually be rationalized. And in some clusters where now water use was beginning to be charged, that there was a cost to it, the industry actors were beginning to look at ways to rationalize their water consumption, to look at better utilization, to also, collaborate across the cluster to see what are some of the solutions they could look at. But challenges also faced were that when it came to wastewater treatment, especially for the SME sector, there are today not enough solutions available. The cost is an prohibitive factor. And the other thing that we also heard very interestingly, that especially for the textile and apparel sector, that the kind of wastewater that is generated is very different in its profile. And when we were looking at the effluent treatment plants, it was perhaps also important to cluster units based on the profile of their wastewater, because that is when CETPs would be more efficient and would work better, because it is such a heterogeneous wastewater that sometimes the effluent treatment plants don't even work well. And we've seen enough examples, where industries have got innovative in the kind of input water that they are taking. They have partnered with municipalities to use domestic sewage water, which is easier to treat, and have actually reduced their consumption of fresh water. So there are a lot of examples that can be looked at. There can be clear, guidelines that can be put on the use of groundwater extraction, etc. But overall, there is also dyeing techniques, which are waterless, which are using less chemicals, which are reducing the water footprint altogether. And it is also merit in investing in such kind of techniques and technology, and see how their uptake can be increased to a larger extent. Technical Textile Secretary Sir also talked about it. So we did have an opportunity to speak to stakeholders in the technical textile sector, and they indicated that there was a need to increase the recycling the content. There was also a need to have much stronger collection mechanisms and a clear labeling for biodegradable plastics, for example, right? Because it was not. It was felt that some of the plastic that was being left in the atmosphere on the environment was not really as biodegradable as it was felt to be. So there needed to be much stricter labeling of this. And the chemicals that are used, look at the cellulosic fibers, that this offers a great opportunity. So these were some of the things that we heard on the technical textiles front. Now, if we are talking about it now, like I said, this is by no means the complete list of recommendations or inputs that we received. There is a larger paper that we will be releasing shortly. This was to really offer a glimpse, but at the same time, when we look at other aspects, right, R&D is important. We also heard the role of academia, updated curriculum. Industry also felt, and this we heard especially from SMEs, that many a time there are solutions, easy to apply solutions, which could mean that you're actually reducing your resource consumption, whether it be energy, whether it be water. But at times, this information is not readily available in one place. So can we look at technology compendiums, right, which tries to put together most of this information together, and they're updated regularly? Can we look at how academia and industry can collaborate much closer to look at some of the challenges, to some of the solutions? And can we actually start integrating circularity into the curriculum of textile colleges, engineering colleges, so that graduates coming out from there are already well versed and look at efficiency in a slightly different way? But the industry overall also felt that there was a need to encourage more graduates to consider the sector, because they felt that today the textile sector was not viewed very favorably when engineers were looking at employment opportunities. Green finance, a very important one, because I think a lot of these transitions, especially when you talk about SMEs, finance will play a very important role if we really want to look at, a transition to circularity. So how is it that you create capacity with the financial sector, with the bankers? How do you make it easy to identify opportunities for circular investments? I think there's scope to work on that. And awareness campaigns, again, different kinds of stakeholders. So you have the industry. I think Dr. Tyagi talked about, so here's a large company which has done great work. But how do you really start taking it to the supply chains, right? And that is a challenge for any one company to do it on their own. So how do you create awareness across the value chain? How do you get consumers into this conversation? How do you start creating that demand for the transparent and circular products? And if you want to look at an immediate way forward, I think the Ministry of Textiles is well placed and could develop a roadmap for the sector, because it's such a diverse sector that it will require a task force, it will require the collective effort. And it's also because it's cutting across so many issues. So it's not just Ministry of Textiles, but like Ranjana ji showed, right, that when it comes to pollution, it is the agencies under the Ministry of Environment. Now, if you're talking about SMEs, then how do we look at Ministry of MSME being involved in this discussion? Because some of the incentives are coming from them, right? So how do you look at, so can the Ministry of Textile actually institutionalize this process and look at an interministerial and multi-stakeholder group that comes together to set the roadmap and start the operationalization for adopting circularity in the country? Skill and capacity building would be extremely important. Especially for workers to keep abreast of the developments, of the changes, and just transition, though I did not touch on inclusion, it was something we realized is an important aspect, especially, for example, if we are talking about cotton sector, right? And if we are saying that, okay, there may be a slight shift from the cotton sector, how do you ensure that there is a just transition and livelihoods for the cotton farmers are not adversely impacted? How do you take them along in this transition? And how do you create other livelihood opportunities? At the same time, if I'm talking about new businesses which work around circularity, now they offer a lot of employment opportunity, or they also offer an opportunity to revive some of the artisan communities which may actually be dying out today. And EPR and reverse logistics is something that can be looked at on an immediate basis, because I think there's a lot of work that's already existing out there on plastic recycling or collection, and there is scope to leverage. And there should be circular parallel interventions which are designed and implemented for the SME sector in particular, right? Because they will need a lot of hand holding. There is a lot of opportunity for them to improve their energy footprint, their water footprint, the kind of chemicals they use, but they will need help with the technology, with the machinery, with the financing, with other value chain support. And sustainable public procurement could be a strategic lever, because if there is a requirement for recycled content, then I think it will set in motion a lot of developments, changes, new organizations and innovations that are needed. So those are a few things that I wanted to share today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the comprehensive and valuable How to Do It guide for a circular textile economy, policy interventions required, and for the call of collective action. Now I have the honor to invite Mr. Tathir Zaidi for the fourth presentation on a multi-stakeholder participatory approach for pollution prevention, efficient water use, and circular economy. He is a general manager at Solidaridad Asia. He coordinates operation in Solidaridad's operational countries in Asia, focusing on SMEs and pollution abatement. At present, he is also coordinating two EU Switch Asia projects titled Effective Waste Management and Sustainable Development of the MSME tanning companies in Kolkata Leather Cluster and promoting circularity in the Tamil Nadu leather clusters for solid waste management. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Charvi. Hope you can hear me. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you so much. So at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers to provide me this opportunity. And probably this is the last presentation of this particular session. It is always difficult to be the last speaker, but I would like to assure the participants that I'll be very precise and I will touch upon quite a practical aspects. So previous speakers already covered a very comprehensive and very interesting aspects. I would like to continue with the same flow and where actually Divyani ji, my previous speaker, concluded her presentation. She has already captured a very important aspects with reference to the subject we are talking about. So as mentioned by Charvi, as part of our EU Switch Asia projects, we are working in the leather sector. So for next 7-8 minutes, I would like to take your attention towards the leather sector. I would like to present you a case study, how we did a few tangible things which are really important for the MSME sectors and how we are aligning it to the textile sector. So I would like to share my slides. Can you see it, Charvi?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Good. So about organization, Solidaridad is an international civil society organization. Originated 52 years ago from Netherlands. Now we are working in around 55 countries across the globe. We primarily work for the strengthening of many of the agricultural and industrial commodities as far as the sustainable supply chain is concerned. So I would like to touch upon this case study we established in last 5 years of time in the leather sector. And the journey began from on 13th November 2017 when Ministry of Water Resources, and whatever I am going to present, I would like to admit that Secretary Ministry of Textiles, Mr. UP Singh, has been really instrumental in this journey. He always gave us valuable inputs, guidance and support wherever we required. So on the suggestion of Ministry of Water Resources, Government of India, we started some work in the tanneries located at Kanpur Unnao region, because unfortunately that particular region, that particular geography and the tannery cluster was considered as one of the key reasons as far as the pollution in the mid.
Yes, sir, we can hear you now. Sir, you're on mute.
And can you see my slide, Charvi?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Yeah. So this was started from Kanpur. The project was inaugurated by His Excellency Ambassador of the Netherlands in the presence of central government and UP government authorities. The learnings are scaled up to the Calcutta region in 2020. The project was inaugurated by Honorable Chief Minister Madam Mamata Banerjee in the presence of ambassadors from 4 of the countries. And then we recently started again with the help of EU Switch Asia in the Tamil Nadu region, this particular project. So actually we focused in our project that how can we make resource efficiency, how can we introduce right kind of practices within the process part of the tanning so that the resources can be utilized in an optimum manner, pollution can be reduced, and it can be institutionalized. As mentioned by previous speakers, it is very important that whatever the solution we are proposing, it has to be technically and economically viable in nature. So with reference to tanning industry, after the slaughtering of the animal, they use salt to preserve the raw material, and this salt is considered as the key reason as far as the evolution of total dissolved solids is concerned. So with the help of our technical colleagues, we designed a very simple desalting machine that scientifically proved that the TDS can be reduced by around 33% in volume. It started with 5 tanneries in 2018, I should say. Now it is scaled up to at the entire cluster level in Kanpur, Calcutta, and now it is also scaling up in the Tamil Nadu region. The cost of this particular intervention is around INR 1.5 lakh, which is quite doable for the enterprises. And this is something the government of West Bengal is scaled it up at the cluster level. This is another project because Secretary also mentioned about the water efficiency. So across the value chain of the tanning, there is a process named flashing, which is the most water intensive process. So with the help of our technical colleagues, we introduced a very simple device. With the help of that, water is reduced by 50% in volume. And this was an investment of 10,000 rupees, around 150 euros. So on an investment of euros 150 or Indian rupees 10,000, water is reduced by 50% in volume. So this was something really quite doable even for the small enterprises. This is started again with 5 to 10 tanneries. Now it is scaled up to around more than 100 tanneries in Kanpur and around 70 tanneries in Calcutta region. For this particular intervention, we received global award last year, and even the Chief Minister Government of Uttar Pradesh invited us and endorsed for this particular achievement. This is another intervention in which, along with Central Leather Research Institute, 100% of the water coming out from the industry can be recycled and reused. This is still under pilot phase, but for this, the highest authorities from UP Pollution Control Board, Central Pollution Control Board visited, and they gave their no objection to the respective enterprise to conduct, to install such kind of mechanics. This is a center of excellence we established in Kanpur region in collaboration with our partner Stall. And this particular center is regularly providing trainings to the workers who are actually working at the shop floors. Because whatever the good practices I am mentioning here, it is really important to change the behavior of the people who are working at the shop floor. Then only it can be absorbed in actual. This is under the ambit of our project. We established a multi-stakeholder platform, which is being chaired by National Mission for Clean Ganga and co-chaired by State Pollution Control Board. So the purpose to establish this multi-stakeholder platform is to establish a uniform communication, because it is very important that public and public-private stakeholders should come at a single platform and they should speak a common language, because usually this is being observed in especially in the context of MSME clusters, that there is some communication gap between the industry and the public authorities. A few examples on how can we convert different kind of waste coming out from the leather industry into valuable products, citing the examples of circularity. So you can see at the left-hand side, this is sludge, which is a complete waste material for the leather industry. We scientifically demonstrated that this sludge can be used in making of paver blocks. So this is something analyzed by industry as well as by the government. And now the National Mission for Clean Ganga analyzed at their level, and they wrote a letter to the relevant government authorities that they should prefer the paper blocks coming out from these the waste of the leather industry. This is a letter from NMCG. And this is something again waste which usually being dumped at the banks of the rivers. So the waste is called as flashings. We scientifically demonstrated that the flashings, we can extract tallow oil from the flashings, which is a raw material for the paint industry, for the cosmetic industry. So this is again an example of circularity. And now these are the leather cuttings, buffings. So we again technically demonstrated that these waste like finished leather scraps and cuttings, trimmings, buffing dust can be converted into valuable leather products. And in collaboration with our partner Dugros from Netherlands, we presented all these articles came out from the waste of the leather industry into the export market. And I'm glad to update that these products are even feasible in the export market. So these are again few acknowledgements received from National Mission for Clean Ganga, Uttar Pradesh Pollution Control Board. In 2018, King and Queen, the royal couple from Netherlands, traveled to India, and Embassy of the Netherlands shortlisted our efforts to present in front of the royal couple. Recently, NMCG encouraged us to articulate all these efforts into a form of a booklet. So this booklet is inaugurated by Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, on 9th of December in the presence of Director General in the inaugural ceremony of India Water Summit. And we also launched a leather trade information portal. This is sort of a solution-oriented portal. If anybody is facing any trouble, how can they utilize different kind of resources in a better manner? That this digital portal will provide them the required solution. So the journey we started 5 years back. Now we are within this 5 years, thankfully we got an access to around 80% of the leather geography, and even the government authorities are taking Solidaridad very serious as far as the sectoral transformation to this particular sector leather is concerned, and they encourage Solidaridad to scale up the learnings in the textile sector. And we are going to start a project on the similar template in the Panipat textile cluster, which has around 400 enterprises, small and medium enterprises in that particular geography. And as far as Solidaridad experience in the textile project is concerned, 5 years back we completed Better Mills Initiative China, which was globally recognized, and we also executed a project in Bangladesh with around 200 enterprises, 200 factories, in which most of the European brands like Dr. Naresh was also mentioning in his presentation were the partner in our project in Bangladesh, and they are also willing to scale up the learnings of Bangladesh in India. So this is something I want to give a brief overview or a case study that how can we Vice Chancellor Sir mentioned in his introductory session how resource efficiency can be institutionalized. So I tried to give sort of a feel that we tried to do similar things with our experience of last 5 years. And I have my colleague, Mr. Sanjay Harane, who is the technical expert in the textile sector. So he will take over in the round table discussion. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Zaidi sir, for talking about such an exciting and rewarding journey in the leather industry, and congratulations on providing viable solutions to make it resource efficient. With this, I would like to thank all the keynote speakers once again for their exceptional and noteworthy presentations. Now we will be moving on to the exciting roundtable discussion. I would like to invite Dr. Fazia Taranum, Assistant Professor in the Coca-Cola Department of Regional Water Studies at the Terry School of Advanced Studies, as the moderator for the session. She is a recipient of the Fulbright Hubert Humphrey Fellowship with 22 years of experience. She is also an awardee of the University of Nairobi IDRC Doctoral Research Grant. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you very much, Charvi, and once again, good afternoon to all of you. We are already running late by almost about half an hour. So I would not be putting in too much time on introductions, but I would really like to thank all the panelists who have joined us today for the roundtable. We have Mr. Vikram Joshi, who is Managing Director, Jaipur Block, Ms. Sangeeta Agasti, Regional Director, South Asia Region, International Bamboo and Rattan Organization. We have Ms. Devjani Hari. You have already heard her. She would be staying back with us for the roundtable discussion as well. Mr. Nipun Bhargav, CEO, Perfect Group, Mr. Sanjay Harane, owner of Harane Systems, Dr. B. Basu, who is the retired general manager of RIL Group, ex-scientist, Bombay Textile Research Association, Mr. Sridhar, PR, who is vice president at KG Fabrics, Mr. Amit Singh Parihar, who is program manager, Institute of Sustainable Communities, and Mr. Naresh Tyagi, CSO, Aditya Birla Group, who has also agreed to stay back with us for the roundtable discussion. A lot of things, panelists we have already discussed in the previous session, wherein, starting from the resource efficiency part of it, the water use, the energy use in the textile sector. We have also, the Secretary also spoke about the exports that we are doing in the sector, and it's going to grow over time. We have also spoken about gender equality, how we need to really take a multi-stakeholder approach that's there, and then benchmarking, waste management, from use. It's not just from production, or it's not just from fiber production, but it's also from use and reuse, and how we can bring in circularity. So many of these things are already spoken about. Most of us know what needs to be done. The problem is, where are the challenges? Why are we not able to mainstream sustainability in the textile sector? So for this, I would first like to invite Mr. Vikram Joshi, who is Managing Director, Jaipur Block. So given your long-standing experience in the textile technology and production sector, can you just let us throw some light on why is it that we are not able to mainstream sustainability? Or what are the challenges associated with it?
Okay, hi, am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Vikram, you're
on.
And
am I also visible?
No, I cannot see you. I can see a nice, lovely, sustainable background, green in color.
Okay, I have put on my camera. I don't know, somebody has to take me in the circuit. My camera is on.
No, yeah. We can see. Yeah, now I can see you. Yes.
All right. Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. And I won't take much of your time. Tarunum has already kind of asked me to be very brief and very precise in my presentation. So thank you, Terry. Thank you, Switch Asia, for giving me an opportunity to share my experience. So let me give you my background. I started my career with the hand block printing industry of Rajasthan way back in 1985. And my job was to document the traditional centers of printing industry in Rajasthan, Pradesh. And while we were mapping these small little towns and villages and small little units, we realized that every possible center in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Madhya Pradesh was situated next to the water bodies. And this was and in the 1985, when most of the units were either closed or the families had stopped producing textiles, and it was not in a very good shape. And what was common between all these three states where we were kind of documenting the whole process, that water was the major reason for them to discontinue their family business. Either the water has gone down, or there was no water available, not even for drinking. So processes were kind of shut down. This was a project which was part of a government project. I was working for the Handicraft Board. And after working on this project, I gave up my job and I started working for a private company in Jaipur. And again, since my interest was in block printing, I started working on water-related issues more than anything else, because being a textile technologist, I think it was very, I felt responsible that whatever I've learned should be made use for the industry and in the private sector, most of the water which was used, I would say abused, for the groundwater or the municipal water, was on a very sheer negligence. Either the person in charge, like color master or washing guy, they were not aware of what they were using chemicals for, or how efficiently the chemicals should be used. And I realized that most of the time the pollution, or the load of pollution, was not because of the chemical itself. It was largely because of the negligence. And in 2003, I started a project called Jaipur Block, which is initiative started to promote sustainable textile. This was started in Sangane, part of Jaipur, and we were given a land by a government department to set up a textile park, which we call it Jaipur Block. And when we were given this land, I would say the last straw on the camel's back was that the land was under black zone. That means we cannot have water from the ground. We cannot draw the water even from the ground. So it was the biggest challenge for me to work on the water management. So I'll quickly share my water management presentation. It is very short and brief. I am going to try to be as short and as precise as possible. Oh.
Mr. Joshi, if you're facing any difficulty in sharing, can I share from my end?
Yes, please do that. Yeah, that'll be much convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll request you to be like super brief, because as I said, you know, we're already running short of time. Huh?
Yes.
Please. Huh?
So, yeah. Okay, so this is the Jaipur Block branding. We have a building in 22 acres land. Nextly, we have features in the park which you can see: training resource center, common facility, and most important is the treatment plant, which is about 500 KLD per liter per day capacity, and we are treating about 90% of our water. And we also have a RO drinking plant, and also STP, which is about 60 KLD. Next, please. I mean, you can go to the next slide. I can just quickly show whatever the background, as I was saying, that the textile industry was using so much of water, and it was very important for somebody to come up with a kind of a role model. So this is where we started working on this concept, Jaipur Block. Next, please. Yeah, so this is the network of the Jaipur Block, and as you can see, the small squares in this teardrop shaped property. We have member units where all the textile effluent is collected in one central place, and all this the pink color arrows are showing how we are collecting the rainwater, and we have a central rainwater collection tank which collects about 130 crore liters of water in an average good rainfall. Next, please. So when we were working on this whole concept, we started working on like what is the area, how much water we're going to get from the rainfall, because our main source of water would be was rainwater which we were supposed to collect. So we started working on all possible parameters and number of units, how much water is going to be. So we worked out is about 1072 KLD liters we can store from the rainwater. And next, please. So this is a very like a systematic plan of a rainwater, how we're collecting it. It's coming from the roof and it's going into the underground tank or individual unit, and any overflow of that goes to the central pond. So next one, yeah. So this is the number. Yeah, next one. Yeah. So this is. Yeah, you can go to the next one here. Yeah, so this is the rainwater rooftop collection calculation which we did. How much water we are going to be getting, and since 90% of this water is going to be recycled, we were pretty sure that we can survive without drawing water from the ground. Next one. Yeah, and next one, please. So this was a water consumption. We worked out with the members, like how much water they're going to be using, and based on their requirement, the calculations were done. Next one, please. This is the drawing of a central pond, which is, as I said, 130 crore liters of water we collect in one rainy season. Next one, please. Yeah, this is a picture which you can see right in the center of the property. We have this huge tank which collects the rainwater, and which we keep on using it and recycling it for our textile processes. Next one, please. This is any water which is again overflowing. We are also recharging the groundwater at the same time. Yeah, this is the image of the recharge well. This is a picture of 500 KLD, which is like 5 lakh liters of water per day, which we treat, which with the 90% of our water has been recycled, comes back to us. Next one. And RO drinking plant for the supply for fresh water and clean water to the employees of the textile park. And within the 1 year of operation, we were awarded as the most eco-friendly textile park by Ministry of Textile. And we also begged an award of certificate of appreciation as a responsible Indian business membership organization in 2016. We keep on receiving delegations from all possible places. Chinese textile industry delegation came to meet us. Almita Patel ji, who was a member of Supreme Court Committee for Solid Waste Management, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, she's an expert. She also came and saw our project. Next one, please. Indian ambassadors posted in various countries across the globe, they all came to visit us, and jury of World Craft Council also came and see what we are doing. So yes, this is the last slide, and yeah. So basically, what I was trying to put it across was the challenge which we took it as water recycling in 2003 is it's very much in place, and we are very happy and very honored that a lot of people come and see what we have done, and we are also, I would like to invite any cluster or any organization who is looking for our experience to be shared. We'll be more than happy to
Mr.
share.
Joshi, I think I will have to stop you here. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm
I think
done with my
great
presentation.
initiative that I can see already happening in Jaipur blocks, and we really find that that's a great learning for other textile industry sector, other people working in the sector. Thank you. I'll now invite Sangeeta. Sangeeta, if you are there, you have been working in the MSME sector, and large part of textile actually happens even in the small sector, especially the handicraft part that happens in the MSME sector. So instead of presenting, I know you have a presentation, but we really have very little time. If you can directly go and tell me the challenges that, sustainability, as people said, that it requires innovation, it requires, okay, you're opening your slide, fine, good enough. You can open your slide and show as well. But I would really like you to focus straight away on the challenges as to what exactly is preventing us, or what are the challenges, barriers for mainstreaming sustainability.
Yeah,
and you
thank
go
you
super fast.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for taking this liberty to actually open my slides. So
no, please go ahead.
To be precise, actually, I thought this would be a very useful thing to summarize all the inputs and my experiences, particularly working in this textile sector for the last almost 16 years now. So I've been working in different, MSME sectors, and textile is one of them, basically. So you have requested me to touch upon the aspect of cluster development, basically why we are actually thinking that cluster could be an opportunity or could be a means or a vehicle to actually address the resource efficiency, and also a lot of like sustainability issues in the MSME sector and also in textile sector in particular. All of us know about the strengths. We are the second, textile manufacturing industry in the globe. So I'll not talk about all these aspects, the strengths that we have. The weaknesses that we have in the country is this is a highly polluting industry, and CPCB has already defined it as a red category sector. And we know about like the poor occupational health and safety related issues, lot of like resource inefficiencies related issues and sustainability aspects. So when we talk about sustainability, there are two aspects, broad aspects basically. One is sustainable production and the second aspect is the sustainable consumption. So here actually I would try to focus primarily on the sustainable production part based on my experience of working with these MSMEs, and the key drivers and then inhibiting factors of the sustainability and how we can actually address that through the cluster development approach. So the biggest strength that the country has is basically more than 90% of our units are in different clusters. And here when we talk about cluster, these are basically the geographical locations where there are a large number of same or similar kind of production units. They coexist, we call it as cluster. That's a Michael Porter definition of cluster basically. So I'm using the same definition here. And if you look at the textile cluster, and particularly there are two aspects, like one is the traditional manufacturing clusters like the handloom side, and the second one is the advanced manufacturing cluster, particularly the units of the industries who are like using a lot of like the other resources like power, electricity operated power loom and other systems basically. So if you look at the traditional industries, out of like the 6,000 traditional industries, the bigger ones basically who are there in the country, almost half of them are the textile clothing kind of production units in the country. And this is a big strength that we have. So on the one hand, we have a lot of sustainability issues, lot of sustainability problems, and we have seen the history, like how the Tirupur cluster or how the Ludhiana cluster and how Jaipur and many other clusters were suffering from a lot of sustainability aspects. There were a lot of regulatory issues imposed by the Pollution Control Board. The state level, regulations are there, and many units, they closed down their operation. Like 15-20 years ago, the Tirupur industry actually suffered a lot in terms of like addressing the requirement of zero liquid discharge and all. But some people were able to then address their problems, and some people, they were not being able to address their problems. So here actually what I would like to emphasize on is basically this cluster thing, and the having a huge base of cluster is a big strength that we have in the country. However, this itself is not a solution. We have to find out like how the cluster aspect can be leveraged to bring out those elements or bring out or create those enablers who can address these sustainability aspects, basically both the productivity and competitiveness and also the other environmental sustainability aspects. So if you look at a typical cluster, there are many firms, unlike the large enterprises where the entire production system is within one setup or one unit. But in clusters, particularly the micro, small and medium enterprises based cluster, you will see that there are many actors or many different units who are making different type of components. Some are into like fabric making, some are into the final value addition, some are doing the trading part. So there are different type of units who are making different type of value addition in the entire chain basically. And they are not like integrated, meaning most of the time you will not see kind of inter or intra-connect between these kind of firms. But there are many clusters who have been able to create this kind of connect. And in my previous
Sangeeta, you've gone on mute. Can you please unmute yourself? Sangeeta, can you please unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'll request you to wind up in 2 minutes because.
Yeah. So in a well-organized cluster, we'll see that like all the farms, they are being able to collaborate with each other and they are being able to address their problems, both in terms of like the productivity and competitiveness challenges or issues, and also the sustainability aspect. There are other actors in the cluster and also in the regional and the national ecosystem. Like, for example, 3 most important pillars of our economy: the policy, the industry, and the academia. So you will see that in a well-performing cluster, these 3 pillars are quite actively collaborating with each other and creating solutions which are sustainable in nature, and people are being able to adopt or adapt to those practices. This is one small example I would like to highlight on, like based on my experience in Sambalpuri Ikat Handloom cluster, where I worked, and also recently I actually did a study on that. So in past these many years, like you will see that there is one small, and this is not even a very path-breaking kind of innovation. This is just a kind of like a incremental innovation. Like traditionally on the left-hand side, you will see that this kind of winding or warping kind of practices were there, which were manually done by the women. And in a family, particularly in own account enterprise, men and women both work, and women are largely into this kind of pre-loom activities and all. With simple mechanization, actually the entire productivity could be increased, and their income level actually got enhanced to 300% actually over these many years. But you will see a curve that how many people are being able to adopt or adapt those kind of innovation. You will see a trend that this is kind of a bell curve actually. And this also actually being able to enhance the resource efficiency. There were a lot of winding problems, errors were happening there. So this process actually could minimize their errors in winding, and thus the resource efficiency was optimized. And secondly, this kind of practices also addressed a lot of gender related issues, because women, their physical problems and could be solved through this practices, and then they could actually put an extra loom in the house to make the extra production of textile products. Now, if I look at the same kind of the curve, like there's this famous theory which is called innovation diffusion curve, and this is true for many clusters, particularly those textile clusters, because I've studied the Ludhiana cluster, Jaipur cluster, and Tirupur cluster, and I found a similar kind of a pattern in almost every cluster. However, the timeline, meaning the number of years to create that kind of a good well-diffused base of sustainability practices, that timeline actually varies. Some clusters where this inter and intra collaborations are quite strong, people are being able to diffuse those kind of sustainability innovations quite faster. And the clusters where these intra collaborations are not happening, there actually it is taking a longer time. Second, the role of policy stakeholders. Places where actually people are well aware of the schemes, government schemes, and they are knowing about the financial sources, they're knowing about the sources for innovations, they are well connected with the technical institutions, they are being able to do innovation much faster way compared to many other clusters where these linkages are not there. Now, if we'll categorize all these people, we'll see that this innovators category, the people who have the ability to take risk to innovate and create solutions, sustainability solutions, that population is very small, 2.5%, and this is theoretically proven by Rosers. And the early majority are people, they wait and watch and they see the success first and then they adopt that. Early majority are the people who actually take a little more.
I'll have to stop you here. And I will come back. You have already highlighted a few challenges, very, very important challenges in terms of, one is wherever the multi-stakeholder approach has been there, the academia, the policy and the industry have come together. We have seen better results. You have also said that sometimes, incremental changes work over transformational changes that's there. Also, in terms of the timelines vary, because wherever the inter and intra collaboration is better, normally it is there, even about awareness and policy. So thank you. I'll come back to you. As I said, we are really running short of time. Nipun, I will now move on to you, and I will just request you to highlight Be very, very specific, because we really need answers right now to certain things. That what are the policies and regulatory or economic instruments that are required? You have been working in a company, you have been doing EIA and environmental management plan preparation, environmental impact assessment, auditing, supervision, training, mentoring, a lot of things around water and risk management in the textile sector. So what do you think should be the regulatory framework that is required? What are the enabling policies that should be there?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. First of all, I'll directly jump to the point because the speakers have already covered most of the presentation that I had prepared. I'm not going to share the screen while I'm going to talk from the presentation, and because there is not a lot of time. As far as the policy changes required to promote circular economy and improving the resource efficiency, I think that as the other rules under Environmental Protection Act and Environmental Protection Rules 1986, CPCB and MOEF have notified dedicated rules for hazardous waste, plastic waste, it is time that we consider textile waste also given equal importance. And these wastes, which people have also talked of, EPR, extended producer responsibility, that may be notified even in our country now, because it took 15 years. We can see from the experience of other sectors also. Like I'll just give an example of electronic waste. It took 15 years for electronic waste to come up to a level where we have sizable amount of recycling going on in the e-waste sector now. So today, if we start thinking about textile waste also, which is making part into the landfills, and we really don't know the fate of the end textile materials. So really, it is really important that under EPA 1986 rules are framed for the waste textile as well. Then it is really important to tap in the bulk textile consumers, such as could be public sector undertakings and large industries who have uniforms, and these garment really they are bulk consumers of such, and what they do with their textile waste. This they can file their returns as part of their consent to operate compliances and then report the data really, which we are lacking to the state pollution control boards, and over time inventory of this data will be with Central Pollution Control Board as well. The next point which I want to touch is the promotion of and incentivization of waste textiles into value-added materials. So like recently, Perfect has been working with some people who are converting PET flakes and bottles into textile materials, and that has really come up in the last 10 years. And now it is a viable business model itself. So this is really promoting the circular economy. And government can also look at supporting the indigenous technologies through R&D projects and promoting startups through tax rebates and all, which are really substituting the import of the country in terms of raw material and machinery. As Secretary Sir already told us that man-made fiber India is not doing so well. The key reason is that the raw material purchase from China or the other countries is very costly, and we don't have indigenously developed technologies. So if we are supporting this, then in man-made fiber sector also India can really grow. So this diversification also one more point which I don't think so anybody has touched so far. We have to really look at the dye manufacturers also as part of the same value chain, and that part of the sector is also a very polluting process. So apart from regulating what types of dyes are utilized in the country and the banned dyes, we have to look at the alternative technologies of dye manufacturing, because that is also leading to a lot of sludge generation, spent acid generation, and its disposal, although has been regulated under hazardous waste management rules, but it has to be looked at. Then for the eco-friendliness, performance indicators also could be introduced, just like this rating system we have on our electrical appliances that we use, 5-star rating. Such sort of thing based on water footprint or life cycle assessment can also be thought of, because that also customer level education will take a lot of time. And lastly, maybe it is thinking aloud, but now as in the EIA notification, Ministry of Environment and Forests have not really included the dyeing units in the EIA notification. I think they're coming from that background of EIA. I would strongly feel that we can really cover them under EIA notification, which is being drafted now in 2020. It was given a draft, and the next draft we think 2022 maybe they are coming up with it. We really hope we cover them at least in the B2 category, so that they are submitting their environment management plan. There is an argument in the committees, and their effluent emission and waste management is really discussed, apart from also looking at their material balance and alternative technology. Then only we will be promoting clean technologies, because these are part of the larger, if we break down the really water footprint of the textile sector, dyeing is really a very important part of it. And the treatment of dye compounds also is very, very difficult. So I think unless they are also coming in the purview of getting environmental clearance, then I don't think so things are going to change very soon. Merely leaving it as a red category unit in the Air Act and Water Act and being regulated by the state pollution control boards is not doing such a good job. And therefore, coming from the background that ma'am has already told about me, these are the steps I think policy level we can do. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Nipun. Very, very hard hitting. You know, you have just been so straightforward in actually stating that where we really lag. So while you definitely highlighted that textile waste should also be given similar treatment as we give it to hazardous waste or even the extended producer responsibility about incentivization, but very important that we need to look at the complete value chain, and we need to look at the dye manufacturer, and also about it not being included in the EIA draft document, which as it is, you know, has been pretty contentious and a lot of debate has been going around it. Great point. I think I'll just move quickly to some of the priority areas in the priority areas, I will invite Mr. Sanjay Harane. Mr. Sanjay Harane, if you could help us out, you have 35 years of industrial experience in the textile sector. What are the entry points that you see, especially, you know, when we are looking at getting some adoption measures? What are those little low-hanging fruits which are there, which could be included? Huh? So over to you.
Yeah. I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, not yet. So Mr. Harane, if you don't, yeah, I think it is coming now. Let me share the screen and you can speak, huh? That will be faster.
Please.
Yeah, please. You can see my screen, right?
I can see your screen, but the presentation is not visible right now.
This is not the one?
No.
We are able to see it.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Resource efficient cleaner production in textile industry. You have to click within a minute. Okay. Why I am not able to see the screen here?
I think you have to stop sharing your screen. If others are able to see it, then probably there is some issue at your end. Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Can I share? I'll request my IT team to stop spotlighting Mr. Harane. Yeah. Can you see my screen now?
No, I'm not able to see. Yeah, I can see now. Very, very nice. Correct. Okay. Let us start once again. Key issues in the textile sector are excessive consumption of natural resources, that is water, fuel, and electricity, missing concept of chemical management system, best management practices, and non-productive output. I will explain all these three terms in my next slide. Foresighted fear of increasing cost of cleaner and greener technology. During my travel to various industries, I could find out that the industry owners who have started this business to earn money, they have got a fear that the cost is going to increase. no focus on environmental impact assessment, life cycle assessment, or low carbon lifestyle. So these 3-4 points are always missing. Lack of attention on health and safety aspect, that is occupational and environmental aspects. So how do we go now? To go with, we can go along with improve non-productive output. Non-productive output for improvement. Not first of all, let us understand. We use so many chemicals, so much raw material, so many dyes, energy, water, power, fuel, manpower, everything, and ultimately we convert our fiber into a textile garment. And during this manufacturing, we sell an end product, and the material which is not sold along with the end product is known as a non-productive output. So if we are able to reduce the power consumption, the fuel consumption, the dyes consumption, the chemicals consumption, and there are several methods available to reduce non-productive output. So everybody should be always focusing on reduction of non-productive output. And during this non-productive output, I can give you some examples. Salt is a non-productive output, water is a non-productive output, power is a non-productive output. We are not selling along with our end product, that is dyed material or printed material. So we have to reduce it. Focus on best management practices. Best management practices are very much popular activity in textile industry. Just I'll give you 1 or 2 examples. That salt is the highest affecting part in effluent, that is the increasing TDS. How to reduce the salt consumption? We all has got some standards supplied by the dye manufacturer that up to 2%, up to 1% use 30 GPL salt, 1 to 2% use 50 GPL salt. So we get such table. But what about 2.1% depth? If it is 2.1% depth, the dyeing master will go with 50 GPL of salt instead of 30 GPL of salt. So there is a best management practice to plot a graph and go along with that concentrations. So you can reduce, by adopting this technology, at least 30% of the salt consumption. I promise 30% of the TDS reduction is quite possible by adopting best management practices. There are other practices also, like enzymatic scouring and so many things. It is not a time to discuss right now. If somebody asks a question, I will reply.
Sure,
Implementation of chemical management system. Chemical management system means whatsoever chemical you are purchasing, you must know about it. You must understand the hazardness about it. All the chemicals are not hazardous. The hazardous part is the ingredient in it is hazardous. So sugar is hazardous for diabetic person. Tea is not hazardous. So we have to attack on sugar. So we have to focus on chemical management system by selection of chemicals, by utilizing in the production activity, and while treating it in the end of the pipeline. Use bare minimum technology. All these 4 words are very nicely explained by the latest protocol developed by Central Pollution Control Board for textiles in 2019. And luckily I was a party to that, making party to that. Bare minimum technology. We have seen that few of the textile industries, I was little afraid to use word major. Let me be bold. Major of the textile industries, majority of the textile industries don't have the effluent treatment plant working in a correct manner. They need to improve. They need to go for the standard size of the segments inside the ETP. And the last one is togetherness for costing and improvement. I was happy to understand that mega clusters are being developed by the government of India. But do we have a common boiler in that? Do we have a common effluent treatment plant? Do we have a common air supply? Just I'll give one example. If we have got a common boiler, then the cost of energy can be reduced by 20%. They have to sell the steam to the industries. This can be very much useful. There should be a centralized laboratory to test. This can reduce the cost of the productivity, as well as China is not going to stand in front of us for the competition. Now, cleaner production is always by forceful activity. Either it is by local legislation, either it is by brand, RSL restricted substances list, Just you go on clicking, madam. Either it is by the eco label or consumer production safety. Next, just go on clicking. Everyone is struggling to achieve the imposed norms by all these brands or sustainability, eco labels or local legislation. Why it is so? It is because we are not following the best management practices. Best management practices wishes us to have improvements in raw material selection, in selection of fuel, in selection of use of electricity, use of fuel, recycling of energy, recycling of power, water efficiency, chemical efficiency, and workforce, the improvements in the skill of the workforce. If we are able to do this, this will be very much nicely handled. Scientific approach which control consumption by trials and testings. Next one, please. Best management practices, as I explained you, I think we had gone through with this, so I will not explain in better way. Bare minimum technology, best management practices, CMS, and reduced non-productive output are the best parts. Let us go with the next. Chemical management system. There are 3 segments in the chemical: green chemical, non-restricted chemical, and hazard chemical. That is 11 priority groups. Let us go next. Green chemistry, the design of chemicals, chemical products and processes that eliminate the use of generation of hazardous substances are known as a green chemistry. They are enzymatic technology, clay-based technology, salt-based dyeing, etc. Non-restricted chemicals are very nicely explained in MRSL, or restricted substances list laid down by European Union. So one must understand the MRSL document and then proceed further. One must study the material safety data sheet. If you ask any of the textile industry, are you reading material safety data sheet? You will surprisingly receive a message that no. It means there needs some training program. That MSDS is the most important part. Next, please. Restricted substances list. These are 11 priority groups which are hazardous and banned for concentrations, banned for usage in the end product. So we must see that these chemicals are not available in our textile product. How we do it? By chemical management system, selection of chemicals, storage, handling, process control, and correct treatment at ETP can be the ultimate solution for avoiding the use of these chemicals, and for which it is a simple method how to proceed further. We have to generate a chemical log, and accordingly we have to use the chemicals in our production. I just give one clue to the industry people. Whatsoever chemicals you are purchasing, you are afraid of and COD level of the and effluent which is being generated. So that COD level, if you check the chemical which is being used at in your industry, 1% of the chemical, take 1% of the chemical and check COD of that, and if the higher concentration contributing chemical can be replaced by lower contributing chemical, this will reduce your COD level. So are we able to do this? Let us go scientifically and proceed further. Reducing non-productive output will reduce your cost. Next, please. Will reduce your cost by 15 to 30%. So I am not only trying to show that how to meet the environmental standards, but I am showing that the cost is also going to be reduced. Okay. Environment.
Yeah, I'll request you to conclude, please.
Yeah, please go faster further. Yes. In 1980, it was a green design. 2000, it was a eco design. Now it is sustainable design. Just go on clicking. Industry with eco material, that is raw material, chemical management system can help. Minimum natural resources, that is best management practices, use of optimum chemical flow, that is best available technology, and maximum recycling. We can get green product. This is what is a sustainable industry, and we have to reduce the non-productive outputs. That's all. Yeah, it is a balance. It is a balance between business objective and environmental needs. Togetherness is the solution. I think if the time is short.
Yeah, I will stop
conclude.
here. Yeah. I will stop here. We will come back. I think, again, very good points that you have brought out. And we have the recording, so we will be sharing that also. I'll quickly move to Mr. Sridhar. Mr. Sridhar, you have also been doing in KR Fabrics, you know, very sustainable production of denims. So would you like to share?
Yeah, I would like to make a small case study presentation of KG Fabrics for all of you people to understand.
So, sir, will you be sharing your screen, or do you want me to share it on your behalf?
Just share it. I'll just share it. 1 minute.
Right, sir.
I'll just be as brief as possible.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, what are we trying to say here? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all of you. What are we trying to project here? You can see my screen here?
Yes, yes, I can see it.
Yeah. So what are we trying to say here is we want to talk about KG Fabrics, which is being the true sustainable denim fabric manufacturer. We just want to present a small case study here. Let me skip the initial slides. What is KG Fabrics? In brief, we are situated at Coimbatore. We make around 20 million meters of denim fabric per annum. We are a distributed manufacturing unit, manufacturing 80 tons of yarn per day, a denim fabric unit making 20 million meters of denim fabric per annum, and we have a gloves manufacturing unit. What are we and how do we claim ourselves to be, and how did we go about this process across? It started approximately 8 years back, you know, and we started getting into the sustainability concept. KG Fabrics, we got ourselves audited by the CII Business Center, and today we are the first Greenco Gold rated company in the textile processing and weaving sector. That means all my processes are deemed to be sustainable. Now, we also got all our products certified as green products by virtue of the Green Pro certification. This also is given by the CII Green Business Center. Now, when you are rated in Greenco, you are rated on different parameters: energy efficiency, water conservation, renewable energy, greenhouse gas reduction, waste management, and all these, as you can see on the screen, based on which you are awarded certain amount of points on which you are then rated. Higgs index has been very popular, not only on the FEM and also on the FSLM. FEM is related to the environment part of it. FSLM is related on the social and labor part of it. We have been rated 84% on the Higgs FEM rating, as well as on the social and labor module, which is FSLM, 93.4. How do we do all these things? What are the key parameters? And that's what I'm going to focus on. 100% utilization of raw materials. That means whatever cotton comes in, 93.5% goes into yarn, balance cotton seeds and cotton dust goes into agriculture. Of the yarn that is coming in, we have a denim unit, 92% goes into the denim unit. We have industrial fabric division, 4% goes there. We reopen and recycle this yarn, which we are getting as waste for gloves manufacture, and short and long waste and polyester selvage waste, we make it into sell it for cow harness thread. So all raw material is utilized. So we say there is 100% utilization of raw materials. Fuel, reducing fossil fuel usage. Today at KG Fabrics, we have a renewable energy between wind, solar, and biomass up to the extent of 60%. And we have, actually, when you take indigo dyeing, normally the industry has a dye uptake around 60 to 65%. But we have, by our own in-house proprietary technology, developed a micron dyeing process, iWash and iTop, whereby we ensure 80 to 90% dye uptake. What does this mean? The effluent has less of dye and thereby making it much more sustainable manufacture. We have been winners of the National Water Award by the Government of India, Excellence in Water Management Award by the Government of India. In fact, the amount of water saved by us every day is sufficient to meet the drinking water needs of any city having a population of more than 800,000 people. Now, how do we do that? We recycle, recover the entire water. 96% is recovered. And we are one of the lowest consuming companies in terms of denim fabric manufacture. we are guaranteeing not to exceed consumption of 15 liters per kilogram of denim fabric manufactured, the lowest in the world. Now, sustainable fibers, people have talked about it in my earlier talk, people have talked about it. The total sustainable fiber consumption based on the last 1 year record is around 51%. As you can see, we consume post-consumer waste, pre-consumer waste, post-industrial waste, PET bottle recycled, organic, and BCI in these percentages as shown in this diagram. Now, we have registered trademark. We sell our denim fabric under a registered trademark called green denim. We are the 100% zero solid discharge and zero liquid discharge unit. That's a big statement. We use less than 15 liters of water per kilogram of denim fabric manufactured, the lowest that anybody can think of. 50% of our consumption we promise is in renewable energy. You've seen that chart which was 60%, and recycled caustic usage up to 80%. We just spoke about the dye uptake, which is 80% using our proprietary technology, and packing material, which is very important. 100% of the packing material which comes from my spinning division is reusable and 80% is biodegradable. 100% utilization of yarn and cotton, which I talked about in the initial slide. We are ZDHC level compliant when we talk of hazardous chemicals and the release of chemicals into the effluents. We are part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the only second denim company in the country to be part of this. In this program on the jeans redesign guidelines, which have certain guidelines as mentioned in the left-hand side, we meet all their requirements. You can see that. And not only talking of the environment when you talk of sustainability, you should also be talking of the social and the labor aspect of it. We are certified as a Great Place to Work certified organization. And this is the last slide. I would like to conclude by saying sustainability is like a meditation, it should come from within. So this has been the mantra for every officer in our company. Every officer is a sustainability officer. If there's no sustainability department per se, everybody has to own up that responsibility. Everybody has to get into that mindset. I would like to conclude here. Time has been short and I have kept my talk very brief.
Thank you very much. I think, but you have really brought out great point, and I think what you have ended with, like, sustainability is like meditation. It's like, you know, a way of life, and we have to feel from within that we want to really be sustainable in our lifestyle, sustainable in our businesses, sustainable in our practices. There was a question also in the chat box earlier about eco-labeling. So before I move on, I just wanted to ask you also, Mr. Sridhar, that when you say that you're selling this in the brand name of green denim, do you put that eco-label there? And also all the things that you were talking, like 100% zero, like zero waste and 100%, you know, you were recycling of the water. So I'm not able to hear you. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can I respond?
Yeah, please. So I just wanted to understand about the labeling also. Huh?
The green denim is a brand name which is owned and registered by KG Fabrics. Okay. Now, at the back of it, we give this green hand tag. See, just as you have the Lycra tags and the other, Liva tags which are there in the market, this green denim tag is given to any manufacturer who buys our denim, who buys our green denim, and at the back of it is a scan code. When this scan code is put on a garment and it goes to the retail counter, at the retail section, when anybody scans this, he is directly taken to the website of this green denim website owned by KG Fabrics, where the detailing of all the particulars of that particular product is given. So there is a traceability element which we are trying to bring about by virtue of getting this in.
Thank you. Brilliant. That's really nice. So now we will move on to capacity building. So what is the kind of capacity building that is required? And I'll invite, before I could invite Amit, Mr. Amit has already shared his screen. So can you tell me what is the kind of capacity building that is actually required or what's the kind of institutional arrangement that's required if we really want to go sustainable in the textile industry?
So thanks
Mr.
a lot.
Amit, just for introduction, he's a program manager at Institute of Sustainable Communities.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity, and thanks a lot for the introduction. Just wanted to make sure I'm audible and you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot. And the good news is that I have got only one slide to basically talk. So nothing to worry about time. It's an absolute privilege to be a part of this panel discussion, sharing the dais with the thought leaders of this important sector, textile sector. Honorable Secretary, he was talking about the basic needs like roti, kapla, and makan. And what I feel is, if we talk about the broader approach, it's the kapla which is providing roti and makan to many, at least in India. So that's very important sector. I represent Institute for Sustainable Communities. We are a 30-year-old not-for-profit organization working primarily in the area of sustainable manufacturing and urban sustainability. And as part of the program supported by USAID, MacArthur Foundation, and currently, very recently, P4G, we have worked with more than 400 textile units, particularly SMEs, small and medium enterprises, both in India as well as in Bangladesh. So coming to your core question of the capacity building and aspects related to energy efficiency, one thing is for sure, I mean, for the last 10 years, at least for the last 10 years, I have been working in this sector. And what we believe is like different organizations have done great amount of work. I completely acknowledge the effort put by them and appreciate the work done by them. However, as of today, also, if we see, the potential continues to exist, which means we need to have holistic approach to tap this potential. And when I talk about holistic approach to implement energy efficiency, to some extent renewable energy, somewhere we will have to go back to the problem definition or kind of identification of right set of challenges. That's where I feel like once we are able to kind of define those very well, we'll be able to find a solution. And what we have been doing is basically, if I can talk about the challenges and very briefly, and these are not the challenges which we are talking about in report and all, on ground challenges. So when you go to any industry and you talk about, this is the technology I have got, would you like to implement it? The first thing they are going to ask is, have you demonstrated this technology? Do you have case study to showcase? Because they have high risk perception whether this technology will work or not work. And if you have been able to take care of this challenge, the immediate next question they're going to talk about is, this technology is going to be very costly because this is energy efficient technology. The cost of the technology is going to be high. You'll have to address this barrier. And if you're able to address this also, the third point, the industry is going to say is, whatever is the cost, we don't have money to make upfront investment. Somewhere these are real challenges also, which means we'd have to address that barrier also. And if you're able to address the third barrier also, the fourth question is, that's fine, but I don't know what is the size of the system I need to replace, what are going to be the, how much saving I'm going to get because of this thing, which means they need hand-holding support, the technical assistance. And this is true particularly for the, if we are talking about energy efficiency implement in industrial sector. So which means we need to have institutionals, and you were talking about the capacity building institutional aspect of it. That's where we need to kind of work on these things. And then when we have got this complete solution, we need to make industries aware of these solutions. Awareness, outreach is going to be an integral part of this. And the last thing is, if we are talking about large scale adoption, certainly we'll have to have policy interventions to make the ecosystem conducive for these large scale adoptions. So these are the 5 challenges broadly, if I can basically, what I've discussed basically, and what would be the possible solution. And that's where the capacity building part will come into picture. So we have got industry, we have got, let's say, Super ESCO or ESCO or any agency we can talk about. What this agency is doing is basically, they are doing consultations with technical experts, with technology suppliers, and they are coming with a technology. So precisely they are taking care of the technology standardization bit of it. That's how they are taking care of, and they are also doing the pilot demonstration. So there are no doubts about the technical performance of the technology. And that's how we are taking care of the technical barrier. Now, what is happening is this agency is also aggregating the demand on behalf of industries. That's where demand aggregation is coming into picture. And they are doing the selection of the technology supplier using the open procurement process. Because economy of scale is coming into picture, certainly the cost of the technology is going to go down. And this is something we have seen, around 25 to 30% reduction in the capex cost. That's how we are taking care of the barrier related to higher cost. And then the third thing is, if the industry is not willing to make upfront payment, the Super ESCO will make the upfront payment, and industry will repay to Super ESCO from the monetized energy saving. And what does this mean is basically we are replacing an old technology with a new technology. Certainly we are going to save certain amount of money, and one part of that money can be retained by industries and one part can be given back to the ESCO. So that's how we are taking care of the financing related barrier. However, as I said, we are talking about e-deployment in industry. We will have to leverage the competency or networking of the local ecosystem. So what happens is, because you need to do good amount of follow-up, technical assistance and all, we need to have local agencies, local technical experts. It could be local industry association. The intent is they will work as an extended arm of this Super ESCO. They'll do all activities what this Super ESCO was doing with industry, but because they are locally available, they have got better trust with industry and they are in a better position to kind of do complete follow-up with industries. And that's how we can leverage their strength also. In India, we have got certified energy auditors who are located across different clusters. Those could be the kind of agencies whom we can basically include in this model. And then to build in additional flexibility around the financing. What if industry is not willing to go by the financing conditions which this Super ESCO is providing? Can we build in that flexibility? And that's why we have got this financing institution who can provide loan to either to mini ESCO or industries. Now, financing institution, they are also in a better position to lend a loan, because in this, everything is standardized. The technology has been demonstrated. So there are no doubts about the performance of the technology. And even in that case also, to secure some of the loan which these institutions are providing, we can have some sort of de-risking mechanism. It could be in the form of partial risk sharing facility, which is there, which is being implemented by SIDBI under the supervision of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, or we can look for some insurance-based mechanisms. So with this, if you see, we are able to take care of the institutional, and because this Super ESCO, they have designed the awareness and capacity building programs, we are somewhere taking care of this institutional and social barrier. And that's where the capacity building is going to be very, very important, because we are standardizing the complete process. The last thing is we are also exploring, and this is something we have done in Odisha, state of Odisha, is basically making utilities part of this model, because there may be some sort of doubt related to repayment of the investment, but if we are having utility on board, we can address that barrier also. So if you see in totality, we have been able to kind of address all these barriers. We have been kind of deploying these solutions. ISC has been working with EESL closely to kind of implement these solutions, even in textile sectors also. But what I feel is, once we are done with this complete solution, there are 2 or 3 things which we need to take care of. And I'll just take 1 minute. That's precisely on ground thing. Number 1 is, while we are talking about this environmental dimension of sustainability, somewhere we will have to have consideration of social dimensions of sustainability. So when we are talking about capacity building, we will have to have local people doing their job. We are working in Tirupur Industries, and we had a feedback like, if you can help this issue of local availability of skilled manpower. And what we did was we started working with local ITI and diploma colleges to impart additional skills related to sustainable manufacturing. So that on one hand, we are talking about this employability issue. The other hand, we are helping industries to have skilled manpower. The second thing is, and Dr. Memon also mentioned this thing, I mean, we are talking about a growth. We will have to have this consideration of gender inclusion. I mean, there have been reports by McKinsey which talks about great amount of increase in the overall GDP of the world if we try to have involvement of women in these process. And the third and the most important thing is, we will have to strengthen the local ecosystem, because we can make interventions when the project is there, but whatever interventions we are making, we will have to make sure like sustainability has to be ensured. And that is what we have been kind of working on. And lastly, I mean, Professor Sharma started with he emphasized on the collaborative work. And what I feel is, given the potential in this sector, I firmly believe partnerships are going to be very critical. And my humble request to all the organizations would be, let's work together to achieve this common goal. And with this, I would again thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. I think it was super comprehensive. Please put your mic on mute.
Okay. नहीं सर, ये point है further कि जो
yeah. So basically, I think that was very comprehensive. You highlighted those, 5 aspects, which was around technical, financial, institutional, social, and policy, and how each of those at different levels, how the address, how it can be actually addressed. So very comprehensive framework that you have presented. And finally, I'll also.
I just wanted to add one thing. If so, using this approach, we are working one of the programs supported by MacArthur Foundation, ACE program, and we have shortlisted textile sector for that. So we are working in Tirupur, and we are working in
Surat. Really be looking forward to that case study as well. You have our email IDs. Please share it with us. We would be definitely interested in that, and we will connect with you separately on this too. Thank you very much, Mr. Amit. Now I would like to move to Dr. Basu. Dr. Basu, you have more than 5 decades of experience in the textile sector. You have also been faculty member at different institutes. You have also been with the Bombay Textile Research Association. Now, when we have spoken about sustainability so much, what are the probably three things that you would suggest in terms of the institution building, and 3 things in terms of capacity building that can be done for actually mainstreaming sustainability? You have to unmute yourself, Dr. Basu.
Now, can you hear now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah. See, let me tell you, from the 2 o'clock to 3, now it is 4:50. I am listening. All the experts speaking. Everybody is very expert. I am just a simple man in front of them. But still, I am telling you, with my 50 years of experience, the sustainability challenges are there. I am telling first, let me talk of textile industry, which is divided into 3 groups. Handloom sector, which is 32 lakhs looms are there. But okay, they are just subsidized by the local state governments. Number 1. Number 2, power loom service center. Power looms are consisting of 35 lakhs looms are in India officially. They are manufacturing 60% of cloth, but they are suffering. Why they are suffering? There is no technology. They are only a businessman. Whatever he thinks, he does it. No loom maintenance, no conception of the quality, no manpower, no training, nothing. That is why they are suffering. How they can survive? And they are supplying 60% of the cloth. Among them, those who are modernized, having the automatic loom, they are doing good. This, even the power loom sector, all power loom sector, they are always telling, I want loan, I want government support, I want this and that. A textile commissioner office, the textile commissioner was there. He can tell better how they are, lacking technology. Now comes organized sector. Sustainability of the organized sector after COVID, I have seen tremendous growth are there. Tremendous growth are there, organized sectors. And organized sector, those who are manufacturing value-added cloth, they are having technical textile, they are making profit. Out of organized sector, some are not making profit because of their lacking management. Ultimately, whoever says anything, ultimately I blame the management. It is the management who runs the show. It is the management who gives the liability of the company's profit and sustainability. Strong R&D, strong marketing are the necessity of today for the sustainability. Most of the organizations do not like to spend money on R&D. They think it is a waste of money. No, it is not wasting the money. I was a finance man, worked for 13 years. I have seen how they spend money on R&D. Qualified man to be taken, right man, right place to be placed, skilled of the operator to be improved, and that there should be good, systematic transparency in the working system. Most of the workers are frustrated. I am not favored, I am not honored, my work and not honored, and so I will leave and that's that. So this is why one subject matter. And number 2 is the water, everything. All the dye houses. Do you know that 80% are unorganized sector? Surat, the dye houses are out there polluting the environment, and they are having that ETP plant, effluent. They are discharged. But what is that? The organized sector, hardly anybody is having dye houses. So there are concepts has come in the world, zero discharge system, number 1, and this thing, acceleration of water, and this is a waterless dyeing, waterless printing. I am just that, so air pollution done by textile unit, that is the cotton, it is now totally under control. Totally. That is, and the boiler chimneys are also under control. So sustainability depends on the contribution. It is a management perception and management how they can run the show. Mission, vision, and strategic management are the necessary of today. Those who are running profit, they are having strong management. Those who are running loss, they take a proper managerial view. Here is my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Very good points that you have brought out, especially, you know, the textile sector, how much of it is in the unorganized sector, how much of 60% of it is being produced by people who own power looms. Probably, you know, for them, it becomes very difficult to really even focus at these things because they are not educated. They may not be having any kind of formal training, even to understand the whole concept of quality that you and I are speaking about. So I think engaging at their level becomes also very important. I think Amit ji is already very curious to contribute here. He has switched on his mic. Mr. Amit, have you had any instance here, you know, with the unorganized sector? We know that a large number of them are in the MSME sector. Large part of them have been in the unorganized sector from where the cloth gets produced. Have you had an experience of working with them too?
Not really with the organized sector, but what we are doing is basically most of the industries, these are SME industries, they are facing all the ground level challenges. I mean, challenges related to awareness, capacity building. So what we did was basically, we launched a targeted capacity building program.
Can you let me know some specifics that what did you include in that capacity building program? Huh?
That's what I'm saying. So the target was like, we're not going to talk about the fundamentals of what is air fuel combustion ratio and all. The intent is based on the level of that supervisor. What we are saying is this is how you'll have to operate the boiler, because as a result of this, this is how you're going to see the savings in your fuel consumption. So that's what I'm trying to say. Basically, the targeted capacity building programs. That's how we did. We were to some extent very successful also. And the idea was like, as a result of this, after this capacity building program, if we can have a pointed action items for them so that they can go back to their unit and they can start implementing these. And if they are struggling with that, we have a provision for technical assistant, basically go to fields and try to kind of educate them. So that's the kind of interventions we are talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Amit. Mr. Basu, you wanted to add something here?
Mr. Basu can tell a lot of things, but time is not there. Everybody is telling.
Let me open it up. Let me open it up. I think for some discussion with the audience, we have not been able to do that. A lot of them have already left. And if anybody wants to unmute from the audience and contribute to the discussion.
Sure. I'm ready to reply anything.
Yes, yes. Anybody from the attendees? Is Devyani there? Let me just. I wanted to bring her in also and get her inputs.
Leave the session.
Okay. So anyone else? So anything on the so before maybe just a couple of more minutes, I wanted to understand if there are other members also who had participated in the discussion, if you can also switch on your camera and come this side. One policy imperative, if I ask you to say that on the policy side, one thing that you think probably can help, just one thing that each one of you have to say, then what would that be? Mr. Harane?
Actually, the policy is developed in 2019 with the Central Pollution Control Board, and we were 7 people to generate the policy. Up till today, the policies were what is to be done, who will do it, why it is to be done. This was described, but this time Central Pollution Control Board Director has given guideline how to do it. That how is very much important, and the training programs near Ganga Basin area are also being done. I'll just give you one example. We were discussing about the sludge being generated by the textile industry. It is known as an hazardous waste. But when we analyzed it, when I was with ITRA, we analyzed the sludge, biological sludge, as well as all combination of all the sludge. And we burned it in our instrument along with 2 other laboratories. It was found that the gases coming out was better than Delhi's breathable air. So it is better than that, and it is passing in air index. So ultimately, we requested Central Pollution Control Board that can we use this as a tool for reducing the dumping ground for the biological sludge, and it was agreed. But the basic thing is that the industry should proceed further and take permission from State Pollution Control Board. The test was carried out with when the sludge was burned out. At the time, the fume gases, they were collected and tested, as well as the residue. It was also tested for 108 chemicals, and it was found out to be better than Delhi's breathable air. I am repeatedly using this word. And
thank you so much.
So certain small things are there which can.
Yeah, Mr. Arane, I think you're making a very good point. But also somewhere when the acts are there, the enforcement or the policies are there. But if we don't have, as you rightly said, how do we govern these policies? So you have a policy, it is not going to make a difference. I think governing the policies is also very important, and there should be, and also from the part of the government, of course, as it was rightly pointed out by Mr. Sridhar, that sustainability, it is a way of life. So each one of us, our own conscience should actually tell us that we should lead the life this way. But then there is also something like a carrot and stick policy wherein we look at enforcement. So if it cannot be enforced, then maybe by force we have to enforce it. And therein I still see that the government is failing to probably enforce it completely. Wherever they wanted it, they have done it quite well. But at many places, still I see that the industry is allowed to get away with it. The second thing is a large number of being in the MSME sector, cost also becomes a problem. So sometimes, they're not able to afford, probably that's what they say, as brought out by Amit also, that, it becomes sometimes difficult for them to even the financial constraint that they talk about. I think we have a hand raised. I think it was Tushar. Mr. Tushar, please go ahead.
Hand raised.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tushar Jani from Ahmedabad Center for Environment Education. We have recently done a project on a roadmap for a sustainable textile hub, wherein we piloted the whole project out of Surat. And we have also been talking to a lot of stakeholders across the nation. One topic which I suppose is quite important from textile industry point of view is not incidentally touched upon in detail today, which is of waste to energy. The textile waste which comes out is in tons of magnitude, and one can definitely have waste to energy projects out of it, and there could be value addition there. Although there are two schools of thoughts that waste to energy should be done or not. I would appreciate if one of the learned speaker can throw some light on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sridhar, you have raised your hand. Would you like to respond here?
I just want to add one point here. Today, while we talk about from the industry point of view, from the consumer point of view, if you look at one point, fast fashion is the enemy of sustainable textiles. Let's put it that way. How long does a garment is used? That's where communication becomes very important, whether every company, every brand needs to educate the consumer towards this, whether it is on media or any other aspect of it. So communication becomes a primary responsibility when we promote. The end consumer needs to know why sustainability is there. And that's where many places, because fast fashion is catching up, that's a challenge which everyone will have to take up.
Yeah, great point. You know, we have already had a series of dialogues and discussions around sustainable lifestyle among youth in India. And fast fashion, we have actually done a very in-depth discussion, including ethical fashion. In fact, Charvi, who was moderating the session today, also probably has a background in fashion and textile, and she has contributed a lot to that discussion as well. Thank you for bringing that point out. Mr. Tejpreet, you have raised your hand too. I will come to waste to energy, Mr. Tushar. If you have a question also, then we take up both together.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so a very brief about myself, that I'm representing the sales of textile machines here in North India as well as the eastern part of the country. So we are supplying textile machines to the industry. Printing machines, these are rotary printing machines wherein the fabric gets printed. So although we are machinery manufacturers, but during my visits to my customers, I observe that there is a lot of scope for improving the resources efficiency. It is in terms of the reuse of water, in terms of using more efficient motors, in terms of arresting the leakages which are there in the utilities, which could be in the airline, water line, oil line, etc. And also investing in zero liquid discharge. So this is something which I have been in touch with Dr. Ranjana, and we will be able to, I am in touch with my customers, and in consultation with them, we will be able to make some suggestions and give data as to what is the present situation and what are the scopes for improvement. So that is a small comment from my side.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's great. That you have brought it out, and since you are in touch with my colleague Ranjana, I think we shall definitely take this discussion forward. Now, coming to the waste to energy question that Mr. Tushar has raised, anybody who would like to respond from the panelist? Okay, Mr. Harane.
The waste coming out from any industry, let us go with the textiles only. When you have got hot drains, you can extract heat from that hot drain, and that water can be recycled back. In my industry, when I was doing my job, in my industry, I was able to produce 3 lakh liter of water having 65 degrees centigrade temperature, which was able to recycle. And I was able to reduce my energy cost by 15%, 15%. Secondarily, the sludge that is generated from the biological sludge, it is around about 80-85% of the total volume of sludge being generated in textile industry. It has got the calorific value of between 3,800 to 4,500 kilocalories. It is very parallel to that of Indian coal. So one can utilize this with prior permission from Central Pollution Control Board, and it can be very much useful. At least your dumping of sludge cost is around about 8 rupees per kilo, plus coal cost is around about 5 rupees per kilo. You can save 13 rupees per kilo. That is the savings. And the sustainability system is not costlier. We have got foresighted fear that it is costly. It is not costly. It can save your money if we work with systematic manner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harane. Mr. Basu, would you like to, Dr. Basu, would you like to add something to that in the waste to energy? And I see a hand raised.
In one word, waste to be controlled. Now the conception has come, zero waste. Zero waste, I repeat, earlier there were in the cotton spinning mill 6% waste. Now it has come to zero by recycling, by upgrading of this product. In the dye houses also the same thing. So if you waste, company will running loss. Company are running losses because of waste generation, higher salaries and wages, excess labor, and utility consumption. And poor management, of course, is there. So I can say, Mr. Dua Saab, you are in the right track.
Thank you so much. Thanks. I will just invite, I think, Amit first. Amit, do you want to, Mr. Amit, comment something on waste to energy?
Not really waste to energy, because you mentioned the basic question.
I'll just go to Mr. Sridhar, because because Dr. Basu said that zero waste. So I'll go to Mr. Sridhar and ask him that they are a zero waste industry, that's manufacturing industry. How do you achieve zero waste?
See, what happens is the entire water that is being used is being recycled. There is a 4% evaporation, so we use it back into our manufacturing process. And the solid sludge which is coming in, we send it to the cement plants. So that's how the entire thing comes in. So there is absolutely no waste generation which is gone in an unsustainable manufacture. So that's how the entire thing is. So we are 100% zero liquid and zero solid discharge plant.
Thank you. Thank you. I think from the attendee, Ms. Ekta, you had raised your hand. You wanted to ask something? Ms. Ekta, if you're there.
Yes, I'm here. Very good evening to all.
Good evening.
We are working on environment and women employment since last 5 years. And we really wish, it's really nice that I come to this platform and heard all of you. My just one question, that if I need some guidance to set up the clusters at few locations starting from Punjab, then how can we contact?
So setting up clusters, who wants to take that question? If Sangeeta is there, I would really like her to take it, but I'm not too sure whether she's around. Sangeeta, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes,
hello?
yes, ma'am. Please take the question on clusters.
Yeah, actually, meaning when she's asking this question, forming a cluster or creating a cluster, probably she is actually meaning it like creating kind of a association, probably, or representative organization of all the manufacturing companies or units over a meaning in a particular location, probably. So there are already many schemes, like if you talk about the textile, like the Textile Ministry also has its own cluster development scheme. But apart from that, the Ministry of MSME, they have two flagship programs. One is the MSC Cluster Development Program and second one is the Spurti program. So under that, actually, if you are thinking of creating a common facility center for addressing any productivity related problems, or maybe some like resource efficiency or water management related things, like setting up common facility center or CETP or something like that. So these schemes have the provision to actually support the hard infrastructure part and also the soft infrastructure part, because sustainability of all these kind of initiative actually depends a lot on like how strengthened are the association, the industry associations. So their capacity development, exposing them to the best practices, skilling, all these kind of soft aspects are also covered in those schemes. So you can leverage those schemes and initiate the cluster development program over there.
So I would suggest, Ekta ma'am, that you please connect with Sangeeta and you may take it forward from there. I would really like to, and I see Dr. Basu, you have something more to comment here, or I conclude this session because we have already exceeded it by more than an hour now. So any last comment?
Dr. Fauzi, I mean, I just want 1 minute actually to add a couple of things actually. Here, particularly when we are talking about this cluster development thing. So if you look at our industrial development policy, generally we talk a lot about the productivity and competitiveness aspect, and sustainability actually is taken care of by other ministries or other people actually who are like propagating the practices and creating different type of instruments to diffuse the ideas. But we do not have a system of integrating sustainability into our industrial policy, and that is one aspect which we need to strongly propagate, meaning our industrial policy needs to like have the sustainability within the design itself. This is one aspect. Second, the actors in the ecosystem, like at the national level, innovation ecosystem level, we will see a lot of universities, lot of institutions who are already working in that aspect, but generally they work in silos basically. Similarly, at the regional ecosystem level and also the cluster level ecosystem level. In cluster level ecosystem level, we also need to strengthen the industry associations or the business membership organizations, because individually the MSMEs, they generally do not have the capacity to address their productivity and also the sustainability related problems, but collectively they can address many things. So we have to also think about all these actors and strengthen their capacity.
Stop you here.
Yeah, thank you.
We will have to take a stop. I think Ekta ma'am has put her email ID in the chat box. If you could also share with her. Dr. Basu, please.
I can say only one point at the conclusion, that sustainability depends on the management policy. You must go for new and newer product. As I told you, strong R&D, better marketing, and the strong workforce. You will definitely success. You will be make profit. You will face the challenge in the global. And already in so many companies in the textile industry, I am telling the name of a few: Trident, Vardhaman, and Reliance, and this company, Wellspan, well known. They are very good, doing very good with a good team and the right management. If you want to make profit, sustain challenge, follow the proper system. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Amit, you have a point to make. If you can just quickly make your point and we end. Yeah.
Just wanted to respond on your point, one policy recommendation. So I feel we need to have policy around gender equity because we will, through intervention of these business models, we will take care of, and these business models, they provide like win-win situation to all the stakeholders. But what we are targeting is not only the energy transition, but what we are saying is basically gender equitable large scale energy transition. So we need to have some policies which promote that.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that part of it, and especially not just at the manufacturing or at the textile manufacturing level, but in the entire value chain. So women are employed in agriculture, in cotton production and spinning and weaving, and many such, along the value chain. So I think a very important point. Management commitment is very important. Also, it's important to understand the diversity that is there in the entire textile sector in itself. So we can't club all the sectors, like everything together into one large manufacturing companies only. So we have the MSME that we have been talking about, probably that also needs a lot of hand holding. So policies are enabling policies to empower them. So while we are putting our acts and putting our laws which are there, but at the same time, it's important how we can actually empower them, how academic institutions and industry and government can all, or multi-stakeholders approach, how we can all come together. A very important point which Devrani has actually brought out about benchmarking. We can't have a national level benchmarking and say this is applicable for everyone. Let's understand that it cannot be like one size fits all. We have to have local level benchmarking because every context is different. So with that, I want to thank all the panelists who have joined us today. Thank you for bearing with us and staying extra time. We look forward to working with each one of you and taking this discussion forward. Many thanks, and over to you, Charvi.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you so much for such a brilliant discussion. I wished that it would have gone longer, but unfortunately, we don't have the time. Now I would like to quickly invite Dr. Arun Kansal, Professor at Terry School of Advanced Studies, for the conclusion and way forward for the event.
Thank you, Charvi, and really very exciting session we had during past 2.5 hours or so. And actually, Dr. Fazia, you had already concluded many of the things. And actually, when I was listening to all distinguished speakers, I was making notes, and my notes are almost 3 pages. So I do not know how to conclude within 5 minutes time. But so I will not be doing exactly the justice for conclusion, because I think almost all the points made by all the speakers are very relevant and very important. And of course, they are certainly feed into what we are looking for too. So I will just pick a few points from various speakers in terms of way forward. And actually, this particular theme is so much close to my heart also, because 27 years back, I started my career as an environmental engineer, and the first project which I did is to design a common effluent treatment plant for textile industry that was in Pali, Rajasthan. And that time I realized, as a young engineer, very enthusiastic, is that the treatment systems for the textile industries can be designed, and that was the era when we used to talk about end of the pipe treatment. Okay, so in mid 90s, when we are dealing with the pollution just by doing end of the pipe treatment, even there I realized that this sector is so heterogeneous, so diffuse, that we have a large number of small scale industries. We also have a very organized large scale industries. So the issues and problems that we see in the large scale industries cannot be replicated, or they are not the same that we see in the small scale industries. And the textile itself is such a vast and as rightly pointed by Dr. Michael Bucky as well as Honorable Secretary, that it is a meta sector, diverse ecosystem, and also very much fragmented. And even if you look at the raw material, we have from cotton to synthetic to silk and so many other things. So this sector, that means the solutions that we are talking about, sustainability solutions, they cannot be one solution that fit into all. So I think that one of the points which I would like to make is that the sustainability solutions, of course, there are certain universal principles which can be put across the sector, but at the same time, the solution has to be tailor-made according to the type of industry. And we need to recognize that textile is a very huge and diffuse sector for that thing. Dr. Menon made a very interesting point that South Asian countries are the hub of textile manufacture for the world, and I think there is a lot of scope for regional cooperation, and that gives me a clue that when our Honorable Secretary did mention about Prime Minister PM Mitra scheme, wherein huge amount of land is to be earmarked for textile hubs. So I was just thinking that can that be also an opportunity for regional cooperation, wherein India is taking a lead from the science technology initiative from the point of view of sustainability of textile sector, and let it be that all the countries which are producing textile should get benefit out of it. So that is something which is very exciting. Third thing which most of the speakers have pointed out is about the value chain. And I think that the value chain has to be extended not only within the industries, but also beyond industrial manufacturing. And Honorable Secretary has rightly pointed out that the fiber, from when we talk of fiber to fabric, so fiber producers, the farmers, cotton farmers, or whether you talk of silk industry. Earlier we used to have a problem of lot of child labor in the silk industry, but now that all gone away. But the point is that the textile sector industries itself also has extended producer responsibility, and I think that as a part of their CSR activity, even if they can think about reducing footprints in the upstream and downstream sector of the textile manufacturing, which includes producers like farmers and also the consumers. And in fact, the textile is a sector wherein it is a basic need, and also there is a lot of luxury which is also associated with the textile. So I think that that inequity which is there in this textile, part of the fund can be utilized for this before and after textile production. So the life cycle analysis has to be little much more larger, and as our Vice Chancellor has rightly pointed out, from fiber to fabric, and as Dr. Menon has mentioned, that we have to go beyond fabric to recycling and reuse of the produced textile. And I think that recycling and reuse of the produced textile will also reduce the burden of fresh textile manufacturing, and as the data says that we are fastly growing in terms of textile consumption. So per capita textile consumption is increasing, and the world production is also increasing, and it is a highly polluting sector. So I think that we need to have an extended value chain, and recycling, reuse is to be there. Another takeaway point which I find is that about our Honorable Secretary mentioned about establishment of sustainability index for textile industries, and also Devyani during the discussion of circular economy has also illustrated a lot of data wherein she highlighted that there is a need to have benchmarks, there needs to have standards, and there has to be rating and labeling. So I think that once we establish the benchmarks, each industry is able to see where they stand. And I think that this benchmarking and the good practices again has to be established for industry to drive their own sustainability initiatives and able to compare where they stand. And I think that this also brings out the point that the textile sector again has to be seen not only from the point of view of regulatory design, Though, as Dr. Ranjana has pointed out, that we are progressively evolving in terms of regulations, and we also linked it to the European Union initiatives and regulations. But at the same time, it is not only the regulation, but there is a lot of economic instruments and market-based instrument has to be used. And in the panel discussion, I find that there has been a lot of pointers about the financial instruments which has to be there to incentivize industries to go for, even if it is at a prohibitive cost for sustainable technological solutions. But I think that the financial instruments will help to especially the small scale industries, which is in a huge number, to leapfrog that barrier of financial part. And of course, market-based instruments will also work when the consumers are aware of the eco-labeling and the kind of a greening of that product which they are consuming. So that is something which is there. Another point which is really good is about the digital portal. And I think that what is important that we most of the time talk about our success stories, but we do not talk about our failure stories. And in fact, it is also important that one solution do not fit all. Okay, so it is important that whenever we are putting the information on a digital portal, we also have to mention that where it will work and where it will not work. So do's and don'ts of those emerging technologies has to be there, because any failure will create a lot of mistrust, and there's a financial risk, and most of these small scale industries cannot take that. So I think that we need to also tread with caution whenever we are talking of innovations and adaptability and acceptability of those innovations. And another interesting point which I find is that not only EIA but social impact assessment also has to be equally given importance, and including of all stakeholders and interministerial cooperation is another. I think that textile industry is not only textile ministry, but also a lot of ministries are also involved in it, and that is something which is equally important. And final point which I could note down, of course they are not in chronological order, so I was just going through that about I really like the common facilities. So far the success of common effluent treatment, success or failure, whatever it is, a debatable thing. But anyway, so we have the common effluent treatment for the waste, but common facilities for the energy production, for many of these things are really very important. And I think that will reduce the resource intensity which is there in the textile sector. So there are many other good points. I am not saying that they are not there, but I think that these are some of the things which perhaps has to be recognized when we move forward. And finally, I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers and panelists for their valuable information. In fact, I was looking at the chat box, and in fact, all the participants also have commented and given a lot of clues and information. Thanks to all the participants of this program, and also thank our sponsors, especially the European Union Switch Program, UNEP, and also our technical partners, AIT and all. And finally, but not the least, Charvi yourself for moderating the entire session. And of course, Dr. Ranjana and Dr. Fazia, who has done a lot of background work, and they still have to do a lot of work post these sessions to compile all the information. So certainly a big thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that. With that, we have come to an end to this event, but our collective efforts and actions to make the textile industry circular will keep growing with fruitful results. Yes, definitely, yeah. Sir. Very passionate people all around. Even the participants, yes, as you rightly mentioned. So I would like to extend my thanks to all the distinguished speakers once again, representatives from EU Switch Asia RPAC, UNEP, AIT and TERISAS. I would also like to thank the organizers and the IT team for their hard work for this event, and to all the participants for being with us today. It has been a pronounced pleasure, and I hope you had some great takeaways today. So I hope you all had a great day and have a great day ahead too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great session. Good learning. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.